jumping the gun. You're jumping the gun. Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Silence.
All right.
Silence. Okay, we're going in 5, 4, 3. Good evening. Welcome to the amphitheater. Welcome to a discussion. It struck me, as somebody who talks about art for a hobby and a passion, that we have not touched on one of the more crucial elements of fandom, art consumption, and indeed in the anime fandom, something that is severely lacking in today's day and age. So I, your host, Clear and Sweet, on the internet, you can find me at godisallolly.com, have put together this fantastic panel brought to you with the finest critics that AniTube has to offer. I am joined today by one psiotic.
Dude, Celsius energy drinks are the bomb, all right?
Indeed. And we're joined today by Psiotic's partner in crime over on the Weebcast podcast. You are both hosts of the Weebcast. Is it called Weebcast? Weebcrew.
No, Weebcast is... Okay, so there's the Weeb Club.
Oh God,
they're just Weeb Club. No,
yeah, and then the Weebcast was, I think, something Jeff Thu and his wife used to do as like a podcast.
Oh shit! Oh my God,
it's very, very confusing because then there's us.
Yeah, you didn't need to work on your branding, Jesus.
Hey, we are the Weebcrew. Okay, there are no
the
others.
Weebcrew, all right, like the Ohio State University.
So Mumi and Psiotic from the Weebcrew, fantastic guests. Thank you for joining me here tonight. I appreciate both of you. I love you so much.
Pleasure to be here.
And the star of the show tonight, who came to me and said, Kai, you need to do this panel. You need to do this podcast. You need to put this together. You need to make this happen. It was my good friend from the anime Plummet podcast. Over in Germany, we have Gizmo.
That's right. Hello. I don't have a catchphrase, unfortunately.
We're supposed to have catchphrases?
We don't have catchphrases.
Well, they don't pay us to be cool and entertaining. They pay us to be smart and know a lot about art criticism, right?
Oh, this is gonna be an unmitigated disaster.
So
you guys are getting paid?
So
I know just enough to come across like I'm knowing stuff. I'm a complete dilettante.
I think that's the first part of knowledge, right? Isn't that Socrates? Isn't that?
Oh yeah. I know that I know nothing or something.
Yeah, in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, that's one of his quotes.
I know how to do research, and that is a skill unto itself, which is just like I don't even know how it's a skill, to be honest. It's like clicking links. It's the easiest thing ever.
Oh, now you can get the AI to make a podcast for you. Like, actually, shut this shit down and go on a notebook and get yourself an own podcast. Put in Immanuel Kant's critique of pure reason, and then have something more profound than we're ever going to say.
I could have just sent you like all of our audio files that we've ever recorded, and you just AI generate our voices for this. Honestly,
I was honestly trying to do that, but your videos are so long over on the Weebcrew that the AI will not. You max out the context window for the AI.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to get the transcripts.
We're too powerful.
Yeah. And this is a surprising turn for Gizmo too, because on your podcast, Anime Plummet, you talk about really shitty anime.
Oh yeah, for sure. Only trash.
Well, maybe.
I mean, I will bring the trash to this discussion too, so don't worry about this.
Is it objectively trash?
That is a good question you asked.
That's a beautiful segue. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about art criticism and whether something can be objectively good or bad art, or is everything all subjective, and is it just your feelings and emotions, man? So Gizmo, what was the onus behind this? Like, you were getting mad having discussions online, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I constantly get into arguments about this. People always say they want to rate their anime objectively, and this drives me crazy because I think you can only rate any entertainment media subjectively. There are certain aspects of entertainment media that you can rate objectively, like technical aspects. but they only ever really serve to improve your personal enjoyment. So the subjective component. So I want to ask the question at first: why do we rate entertainment media? For me, I would say the biggest part of why we rate entertainment media is we want to communicate how we feel, right? We want to tell people, okay, this is good. You go watch this, read this, whatever, play this. And a smaller part of this is for like as a personal reminder. For example, you can go back and see what did I rate this anime that I watched 5 years ago that I only vaguely remember. That's also fun. But for the most part, I would say we rate it to show the world what we think about the art, right?
Yeah.
Well, it makes me wonder, because now that you've brought this up, I've been thinking over the past 5 minutes now, when did that start? When did that become a thing to like assign a number as a, I guess it would like probably come out of like movies and like theater and maybe books, like giving like something like however many stars, I
Mhm.
guess, and that's just kind of just become an accepted. It's not even necessarily a universal cultural practice, like this idea of like meticulously tracking what you watch, what you know, you got your letterbox, you got your my anime list, your what's like the one for music? It would be like rate your music or something.
Yeah.
VNDB if you play VNs. I mean, we're talking about this in the context of anime. What I think is interesting is that there isn't really a good analog for my anime list in Japan. There are websites, but they have nowhere near the amount of like cultural cachet that my anime list has, like, you know, in like the Anglosphere when it comes to anime.
Yeah, you said a couple things there that I want to contest real quickly because like okay,
Hmm.
yes, using a formal number system on your a phone to talk about Chinese cartoons is certainly a modern thing, right? And sharing it with other people is only in the age of Web 2.0 and social media, but the idea that people have been judging art as
Hmm.
good or bad, I think that's a complete folly to say that certainly that
Oh yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
predate,
Oh
even
no,
the
no, no, yeah, that I
yeah,
mean that goes all, yeah, that
yeah.
goes all the way back to fittingly ancient
I
Greece. Who
mean,
was it?
well, no, I mean,
Was it
even further back,
Aristotle?
think about like
Yeah.
the Neanderthals, and like Og is a great drawer of the horse on the cave
Oh yeah.
walls. He's the best
Well, it's
drawer. Why is he the
well,
best drawer? You know,
you know, it's yeah, that's something
it's
that's
as
just
old
going
as
to
art
evolve out of
itself,
any
of
sort
course.
of,
Yeah,
yeah, any artistic tradition is that's going to come up. But yeah, this just specifically in terms of like assigning a number to it
yeah,
is a very interesting concept to say the least.
yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
you're fitting a square peg into a round hole in some degree. That art is
Mhm.
too complex to be numerical or quantified in that way. And
Mhm.
like starting off this discussion, I want to say that getting into this, we know this is a folly. Like there's you can apply quantitative metrics to a lot of things. Like how many frames are in this animation? How many frames per second,
Mhm.
or is it animated on the ones or the twos or or how much motion
Yeah.
or just runtime, all of these types of things. But that
Mhm.
doesn't produce you a metric by which you can objectively call something good or bad, right? So
No, it
we
keeps you
understand that
consistent certainly.
humans are the conduit by which we judge media.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Brings in like such a messy slew of things: cultural context, personal investment, all
Right,
sorts of,
right. You're
yeah.
this dirty fucking lens.
Well, it's funny because like, are you watching Medalist this season? Either of you?
Oh yeah, I'm watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like in Medalist, you know, they're talking about like what moves they can do during their performance, and like how many points those are worth, like things like
Right,
that.
right.
So there are ways to quantify things in a way that, especially in the context of like a competition, like ice
Oh,
skating is
right.
still fundamentally dance, but it does like it does keep you consistent to some degree to be like, okay, this is how much this is worth. This is how much this is worth. This is how
Right,
much this
right.
is
The
worth.
quad toe loop, if you land it like this, it's good. But if you do a backflip,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
0 points. No, yeah, I get you.
yeah.
like diving or any type of performance sport too. Yeah, they
Right,
force
exactly,
the
yeah.
objective onto the thing, and even then you get the thing about the Russian judge gives it a 6.2. You know.
Oh yeah. I've been watching a lot of bodybuilding videos recently, and it's like, to a certain extent, it is just kind of like, it comes up down to like the judge's preference at the end of the day, whether or not they want like the big mass monster Ronnie Coleman, or like someone who has a much more like aesthetic physique. Essentially, there is always going to be a degree of opinion and contention, and yeah, just like subject, and there is no way to perfectly do it at the end of the day. I remember specifically, do you guys ever watch like any old Arcada videos?
One thing about the figure skating thing, though. I mean,
Oh
the
yeah.
big difference obviously is that figure skating is a competitive sport, right?
Yes.
So you have
Yes.
to kind of find a metric to how to rate the figure skaters. Whereas watching anime is not competitive in any way.
Hold your horses. All right.
Well, the competition's money, Gizmo.
You're saying I'm not an athlete clocking in all these hours?
I'm a
Yeah, but
competitive anime watcher. Okay.
Competitive anime critic. Well, you know, even the criticism
yeah.
itself. But yeah.
But you don't directly earn money by someone else rating your anime high. You earn money by
Unfortunately.
people enjoying your anime and
Gizmo.
maybe spreading the word. But ultimately, it's about like people watching your anime.
Right.
Can I blast your ass here? Can I blow your fucking mind? And I'm sorry for all the people
Sure.
that comment on my videos that are like, use less curse words. My father was a sailor. Video games, right? Video games, they have contracts for the people who make the video games. If this video game gets an 85 or higher on Metacritic, they will then
you're
get
talking
bonus.
about Fallout New Vegas?
Yeah.
I'm talking.
Is that what you're thinking about?
Tell me about Fallout New Vegas. I don't play those games.
I mean,
New
there
Vegas
a-
was just like famously known. Like Obsidian had a clause in their contract with Bethesda that if it got an 85 or above on Metacritic, they would get a X amount of bonus, and it got an 84 on Metacritic.
Yeah, they missed it by 1 point.
Well, that just goes to show you that whatever aggregate metric or whatever that they use to grade the art, that's not the question here. But there are people who make their living of their art being better than other people's art.
Yeah.
Yeah, but being better is, in my opinion, a very subjective thing. And
it's being better at like filling out a specific rubric. If that that's where we get like the idea of like Oscar bait.
Ooh, okay. So I just watched that movie with the Cardinals and the Pope and them dying, and it was the most Oscar baity shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh man.
Fucking Conclave.
Yeah, Conclave. That was it. Oh,
we did watch the Oscars this year. What was it? It was Sing Sing. Sing Sing was the one I had that was like, oh, this is like it's prisoners doing like music or something, some sort of like art in prison. Like, that's chef's kiss.
So no, that didn't win. Nora won all the stuff, and I watched that too.
Yeah,
and that was some real shit. Like that was an actually good, not Oscar baity movie, and I was like, holy shit, the Oscar, the people that should be Oscar baited did not get Oscar baited, and I was like, whoa.
Hey. So did you see Flow?
Which one?
Flow, that won the animation animated feature category at the Oscars this year. It's like the first like indie film to do it. It's like this European animated movie about a cat, and there's no dialogue. It's just a cat and like a capybara friend and a bunch of animal friends trying to survive this massive flood. And it was like animated entirely in Blender.
Oh shit.
Really, really cool. Yeah. And it ended up beating out like Inside Out 2, which at the time would have been the highest grossing animated film of all time.
Oh my god.
Insane stuff. But yeah, I think Oscars might be getting a little bit better, but that's a different matter.
We missed the boat on the horse. We put the cart before the horse on this one. We wanted to talk about metrics and broaching the idea of like, if you attempt to say anything about art, you are going to need to then parse the art into elements. And how discrete you can make those elements is a large part of how comprehensive your review or ideas are going to be for what you're critiquing. So you know, and in this way, one of the things I want to talk about too is just how then the review itself becomes this own new art, right? That how detailed your review can, how well you can convey your
Oh yeah,
ideas is in and of itself an expression of art, and really
absolutely.
cool.
Yeah.
But no, the idea is like, what metrics are you using to talk about media? And in anime, I think we have some very well established ones, because there's different types of like people that get different things from anime. And I think one of them is like the Sakuga motherfuckers that are that are all about the how many cuts, or who did these cuts, or use your
Dude, the
words.
keyframe, Yurupon. Oh my god.
Is that it?
Yeah, Yurupon is like he's like the bones. Anytime you see cubes in animation, it's
Oh,
probably
I know
Yurupon.
these. I know this. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
Yotaka
yes.
Nakamura. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it becomes you've informed your tropey things, your circuses. What's the one with the missiles?
Itano Circus.
Itano Circus. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then but those are also like more general anime specific calling cards that are more references than anything. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking more of something like, imagine conceptually a Dutch angle, right? When the camera is not aligned to the floor, right? It's tilted. And this is a symbol for making things off kilter, or confusing, or panicky. And this is like a symbol that is used in visual media to convey this idea that, or this emotion that human beings widely understand. And you can see things, I talk about it all the time, my breakdown of Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, when Kyon's freaking out, the camera gets all blurry and tilts. And I'm like, you see how this is using these well-established tropes, or not even tropes, but more like visual
Conventions.
Convention. Yeah, established ways of doing things to convey this idea of what Kyon's feeling to you, and as the viewer. And in this way, I think it would, the story is better, and Kyon's panic is conveyed to you better than if it were not used, or if it were not blurry, and if it were not tilted. That would be a worse version of Kyon freaking out in Disappearance. So
Yeah, but that's
an interesting.
objective.
Go ahead.
That's an interesting thing you bring up, because I'm sure, like, nowadays the Dutch angle is like an established technique to convey what you want to convey, right? The panic, the chaos.
You say
but I'm
that. You say that, but have you seen the live action Cowboy Bebop?
Oh baby, oh god.
That
no.
has some of the most I would say inappropriately used Dutch angles I think I've ever. It's like, it's just a normal scene of people talking. Why is it, does the cameraman only have one arm? What the fuck is happening?
So that's something we want to talk about too. Bad creators. I have a whole thing about handshakers. Like, we want to talk about, like, can the artist mess up? But even in that, we have the idea that there is a way to do something, and it's established, and it's effective, and there's a way to do something that's not effective.
Okay, but what I wanted to say is, I'm sure, like 100 years ago, when the Dutch angle was not a thing, right?
Yeah.
If you were to use a Dutch angle in a movie, people would say, okay, this is the camera is crooked. It's not aligned with the floor. This is bad. This is objectively a mistake.
Right.
But nowadays, it's an established technique, and people would recognize this as maybe not objectively good, but objectively not a mistake. And so I think that alone is kind of disqualifies any objective arguments about like art for me.
Oh, well, you're right to one degree. Like, yes, this was invented sometime, and it was used for the first time in some time, and it was probably not in the common lexicon of visual storytelling at the time. And to some degree, I can entertain that argument, and I want to hit you with a different counter argument. But you've also brought up the idea that art can change if just the general reception and the general human, I don't know what you want to call it, like status, or like our mindset changes, our culture changes, and then art can become retroactively better or worse because of this. And I have examples for that too. But
Oh yeah.
the first example I want to go to is I want to take it more broad because the Dutch angle, as you are correct, Gizmo, is a very specific thing. I want to talk to you about the color red. The color red in like a Ikuni thing, the way he uses it with just the stark red and black and on hyperviolence scenes in a lot of his movies. And I talk about this in Adolescence and other things. And the color of red being an aggression color, something as primal as that, right? And you can say that, yes, that doesn't mean that to everybody. There can be, if you're conveying some type of emotion, there can be psychopaths that don't understand that type of emotion. Like it's not a universal symbol, right? But
I can give you a great counterexample.
It's as close to a universal symbol as you could possibly get, no?
Consider the following.
Yeah.
Clifford the big red dog.
He's a mean motherfucker. I don't want to hear any shit. He was always evil. You missed the subtext.
I mean,
maybe was that what I was supposed to take away from those?
That was blood. He was covered in blood.
Fucking Cujo.
Yeah.
So our understanding of like the symbology of red stems from like what? Like if we go back to like our primate monkey brain.
Oh, that's easy.
Red doesn't occur very often in nature naturally. At least not very vibrant red. So you'll have like flowers occasionally, but red you would associate with like something that's you drawing your eye to it, right?
Yeah.
Like there's either a predator that is red, or there is like a fruit that is red, or there is blood. And so blood
is probably the
I was gonna say blood, right? Blood.
So
and all humans have blood.
Yeah. So then it's then associated with danger in the sense of like, oh, I hurt myself on this thing. I'm now bleeding, it is red. But that's not an objective thing. That is like our perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because
well,
if you tweak like if you tweak like the levels in your blood slightly, and they're blue, and everyone was bleeding blue, would then blue be the danger color, right?
Yeah, it's also the color of the sea.
Or pink in the context of like Danganronpa. But then again, you can have a character bleeding and be hilarious. That's the whole nosebleed gag in anime.
Okay, yeah.
I don't look at that and go, oh god, oh fuck, he's gonna die. No.
Well, you bring up a different interpretation because symbols can have multiple meanings. That is absolutely true. And red can be roses, right? In Utna instead of blood. But the idea was that you were saying that all humans have this, but humans are necessarily subjective. Well, stay with me on this one, that all humans have blood. And you would still call that subjective because it's the shared experience of all human beings living, knowing that when the red water comes out, it's bad, right? But I would counter that if it is universal to every human being to have ever lived, then it is objective.
See that
have ever lived, but that's actually I think that's actually a problem that they're facing with like nuclear waste disposal, is that they're trying to figure out ways to convey that there is danger ahead that would be universal to people in a future.
Right.
God forbid that everyone just died.
Right.
Because they're not able to just say,
or
let's show
like
something
language
red.
is like no longer decipherable. Like what we like tens of thousands of years into the future when this waste will still be incredibly toxic.
Right. And there's no way to go forward. Yes. And you don't know what color people's blood will be in 10,000 years. Like, yes. And that then the symbol may change. And then people will look back on this media and they'll be like, why are they using red for all these violent scenes? Red is the color of happiness,
it's the color of love, red hearts and stuff.
There you go.
But it's also a question
of passion.
It's also a question of, well, how are we defining objectivity? Is objectivity just simply intersubjectivity? If everyone agrees on something, if everyone has the same subjective experience, does that then clue us into some sort of objective facet of reality?
That's my argument. Thank you for making it. Boom.
But is there anything that everyone universally agrees on? I don't see it.
something. It's they're difficult to parse. Like, I mean, obviously, you smell sulfur in the air. That's just something that we've kind of been biologically programmed to find uh revolting because it's like
Mhm.
associated with like dead bodies and desiccation. An interesting one that is used creatively, unless you're watching a movie that has smell-o-vision, is uh high pitched whining sound. Like whenever you're in like a horror movie and the
Yeah,
characters
yeah,
walking down the hallway and it's dark and you have that like that high pitched whine, that there have been arguments made that essentially link that sound back to like this sort of like primeval, like you're hearing like a baby cry and
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's
Some
yeah,
reptile
that
brain
kind of
shit.
thing.
Can I take it with this and
Yeah.
run with this? Because on
Mhm.
think about a continuum. Think about like blood and this high pitched whine and the Dutch angle, maybe a little bit closer on the thing, as like fairly general universal symbols, right? And then think entirely on the right side of like you had a one hyper specific thing happen to you, and then that scene is repeated in the movie that you're watching, and you notice some, you know, hyper specific thing in the way it's animated that really connected exactly with what you had, or your personal
Mhm.
experiences all the way that other people are not going to share. So what I like to
Mhm.
say is, in some way you are entirely unique from every person that has ever lived and will ever live. And then at the same
Mhm.
time, you are exactly the same as everyone to have ever lived. And I think when we judge art, we're
Mhm.
grappling with this paradox, this duality, right? Of the rising angel and the falling or the falling angel and the rising ape. The idea, you know, that there is subjectivity, but we have a need for objectivity. We have a desire to chase
Mm.
objectivity. So
See,
Uh,
that's where I'm gonna have to put my foot down because we can't objectivity paradoxically itself is kind of a subjective concept because you have to remember objectivity is not something that we just have had a intuitive understanding of for like all history. Objectivity itself is a fairly recent concept. There's this good book that I am now holding in my hands from Lorraine Daston. I don't actually know how to say their last name. And then Peter Gallison. And the book's literally, it's just called Objectivity. And what it is it's a history of objectivity. And
ooh,
they make somewhat controversially, but I think they make a pretty solid case for it that what we understand as objectivity is itself, it has a history to it. It largely kind of
yeah,
evolves out of this like late 18th century like scientific revolution like like
right, right.
people have been conducting like these sorts of like scientific experiments for so long, but only recently have we come to understand these things as uh objective versus subjective. And an interesting point they actually make is they tie this to the development of the camera. And there's
Ooh,
interesting
I like
arguments
this. I like this. Yeah.
regarding whether or not objectivity is even necessarily desirable, because if you are to just take a photograph of something, say you are looking down a microscope, you're looking at an amoeba, you can then use a camera to put it down the microscope and take a picture of that amoeba, and that is essentially an objective depiction of what that amoeba is. But is that always useful? A better example would be in your 8th grade biology anatomy textbooks. Would you rather see a human being carved up and like dissected and like all their organs being displayed as like actual things? I'm gonna
yes.
assume that's probably not. Oh, okay. Okay, so Mumi is a sociopath. I'm gonna assume that's something most 14-year-olds probably shouldn't be seeing. So we show them drawings instead. And in part, it's also because we can then draw attention to specific details that we otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to prioritize in an objective representation of that thing. So if you're looking at the amoeba, you can draw it such that you're like identifying the mitochondria of the cell, the powerhouse of the cell, of
Thank you,
course.
son.
You can cut open the nucleus and show what's inside the
I
nucleus,
get what you're
whereas like
saying.
as just an amoeba, it's just there.
So you're on some simulacra and simulacrum shit, like some Lacan, like this is not a pipe, this is a representation of a pipe, and there's a
Oh yeah, oh,
there's a purpose to that, right? There's a
Yeah.
useful purpose to that, and I wanted to touch base on something you said earlier. I think it was Gizmo of like, that what are rankings and what is assigning a 10 out of 10 to Cowboy Bebop? What does that give you? How is that useful? So I think this ties back around to like, what is a ranking useful, or what is a recommendation useful? It's only meaningful in so much as it is useful to someone else. If you guys trust me enough to go fucking watch Princess Tutu because I say it's the best anime ever made, then it is meaningful for me to label that with the value judgment of it being good. And
But see,
it's
giving something a
go, Mumi.
score. Giving something a score is kind of useless in a vacuum. It is only really useful in the context of what else you have given scores, and or in the broader context of what else everyone has given that thing, right? So if we're talking like on my anime list, if you're in a conversation about Freerin and someone's like, I gave Freerin an 8 out of 10. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
That means nothing. It's just like, oh, you gave it an 8 out of 10.
Well,
okay, so you
it
might
means a
have thought
couple
it was
things,
pretty
right?
good.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how they're using their scoring system.
Yeah.
Because there could be somebody that is like, I am doing a demerit system.
Yeah.
And it's a 10 and a
if it's a 10 is the highest score and the one in the market based off of arbitrary things, right? Or I'm doing it by rankings. I only watched 10 anime in a year and it was the 8th best anime I watched that year. Like it's completely arbitrary outside of the context of their entirety of their list, right? So like if someone goes to my list and they're like, oh, they gave Freerin a 6. Why would they do that? And then they look at the other scores. They're like, oh, okay, so they like these things more and these things less.
Yeah, right. That's the purpose of a review, kind of right? Like, of writing out what you liked and what you didn't and breaking it down further, right?
Yeah. And this is something that I will never understand is invariably, and this keeps happening, and I don't understand it. Whenever an IGN score is fucking controversial, I always think to myself, who gives a fuck? Who's reading this and care? Why does this why does it matter? Like if Mumi gives something a 9, I know Mumi very well, quite intimately, some may say.
Right.
Oh no.
So a Mumi 9, I'm just like, oh, fuck, I'm gonna need to check that out. God damn, 9. Whereas like we have actually developed this meme where I always score something 1 point higher than Mumi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have actually developed a system, though. I have developed a system.
Can we talk about our systems? Let's go through and talk about our systems. Yeah, because I think that would be very good of how we individually approach media. Because I think I disagree strongly with Mumi, but let's go through. So who wants to go first?
I mean, mine's like for me, it's basically just become a matter of like I've seen so much anime at this point that it's just like I kind of just almost go off like gut feelings. Like I know when something like what a score kind of just feels like it is. I'm not necessarily like I used to be someone who is like really like meticulous and going through and making sure like, oh, where do I place this thing? Do I like it more than this thing? Yeah. And now it's just kind of like something I'm like, yeah, it's like a 7. That's an 8. It's a 6. Yeah, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like I know how I respond to things that fit into these numbers well enough now that it's kind of just become a lot more easier to just assign numbers.
Well, that's something that happens as you view more media, right? You get a better context for what's good and what's bad.
If you view media in a way that is conducive to scoring, I score anime quite a bit, but I also play a lot of video games. I listen to music, and I'm not really approaching those in a manner that I think is really conducive to score. I just like I listen to the album and I really like it. I guess it's a 10. I don't I'm not really putting that much thought
maybe
into the
that's
score.
maybe that's something we should come back to. Does anime like invite being rated? You know, is there's like some social pressures or something? But okay.
I have things to say about that for sure.
All right, I wrote it down for a topic to come back to. But who's next? Gizmo?
But so I think the main thing is that you need a baseline, right? You probably when you start rating something on Mel, for example, when I started, I was looking at what is my favorite anime. That's a 10, and what is the worst possibly imaginable anime that's a 1, and everything is accordingly in between. But my question to you guys would be: do you incorporate like objective qualifiers in your rating of anime? Because that's the main thing that drives me so crazy, is that people think if they didn't enjoy an anime that was technically well made, that they have to give it a higher score because the animation was so good and so fluent and the music was so good and the voice acting. But somehow I hated it.
Have you ever gone on my anime list and seen those ratings where they have like story 6 out of 10, you know, and average them all together and
Well,
do
something
you
I
guys do that, or
sorry, go.
Is it, do you guys do that? Like rate something that is objectively quote unquote better higher because you think you have to
Ooh, good question.
Not really.
Hmm.
So I think for me, when I hear people say they're rating something objectively, I think it's a matter of like just not having the tool, like the vocabulary to like kind of explain what they're saying as much. It's kind of like when people say like this is a deconstruction, and it's usually just like a subversion. It's like you can kind of like put together like, okay, I know what you're trying to say.
I can
So like when
infer with
someone
this through
says
context clues.
yeah. So when someone says like I'm judging this objectively, I in a shorthand, I'm taking it as a shorthand for like I am judging this by what metric I can kind of express an appreciation for certain aspects of it, right? So like that's how I kind of approach scoring in general. Is like I kind of assess how I appreciate the work. Am I watching something like Don to Don? I appreciate its visuals a lot more than I might appreciate the writing, but I don't necessarily don't appreciate the writing. So like I might say that the visuals were really good and like I have a lot to appreciate about them. Um, whereas like maybe you know, it's not fucking the most deep, complex narrative I've ever seen,
yeah, and I
but I
mean
still can
for some
appreciate
people,
aspects of it.
for some people, the visuals, for example, is everything that matters, right? They're very visual people that don't really care about the plot or the characters. They care about like great animation and maybe great sounds, you know, and so that's obviously going to play a factor, but that's also subjective.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what lens are you bringing to this work? Yes.
yeah. So like I can appreciate so the stuff that I really like the most is like a synthesis of all things, right? So like great visuals, great storytelling, whatever.
Yeah.
Does that so like if I appreciate something that I think is well written in certain contexts, like maybe it is very thematically dense, but maybe not it is not as super well written on like a character interaction basis, right? Like if someone's watching it and they're not really in tuned to maybe like the history of Japanese apocalyptic text or something.
Right.
And we'll use Shimatsu Train as the example here. So if you're not in tune with like the history of you know general Japanese apocalypticism, you're not kind of like looking out for this sort of content tourism stuff, and you're not looking at all these things that are going on around the writing that are obviously a lot of effort being put into as like a writing aspect, and you're only really in tune with like the character interaction. You might be like, oh, you know, this is a fine show. It had some funny character interactions, but it wasn't that great
Yep.
because you're just missing an entire layer of all this like subtext and
Well, that's
meta commentary and all this shit.
Oh, you brought up so many good points here, and there's so many great springboards to go off to. But the lens by which you view the thing, and that can always change. It can always change. It's why it's interesting to share your perceptions of media with other people, because you get to hear stuff that you weren't aware of or didn't know about, or
Yeah.
the boy, I have so many thoughts in my head about that.
I think you just described like Kai's entire channel.
Yeah. And I did a presentation on this, right? I sat up there and I said, like,
Yeah.
I talk about like Free, like the swimming show Free. I was a competitive swimmer. There's parts of Free that hit differently that none of y'all are going to know about because you weren't competitive swimmers. And like,
exactly, yeah.
But it's a Fujo bait show, and there's you talk about bringing your own lens to the thing of like, I've read complaints where like Dragon Ball is a poor feminist show, and I'm like, yeah, no shit, like you're reading it in the way it was not intended to be read. Or like there was this great one about like Kill la Kill is all this Shinto imagery, and he's using like the lens of Shinto to talk about what goes on in Kill la Kill and the light and Amaterasu and all this stuff. And like all these lenses and external things that you could bring to a work by which you can choose to look at the work that makes the work better. When people
or worse.
Yeah, or worse. Yeah, demonstrably worse.
Or worse. You can learn
absolutely.
Stuff. You can learn things about a movie that certainly make it worse.
Yeah.
Clown House.
Or some like Birth of the Nation where you can't watch it anymore because it's racist as fuck. And that's like
yeah.
This is what we were talking about earlier. Like culture moves beyond, and you have to you have to look at it.
There's a really good video. Oh, sorry, go.
No, it's just look at it through how I would say look at it through how it's intended to be viewed. And this is tough too. I have this anecdote. Keep your video on the background, and keep it in your mind. But I have this. I was in Portugal recently, and I was looking at these old fucking Catholic, like what do you call them, with the big paintings on the church things. What are they called? Murals, I guess, something, giant Catholic big paintings, and they're all destroyed, and they're all like, because they were made in fucking 605 BC or whatever, and you have to think that like the entire context of how to consume this piece and literally the physical reality of this piece has been warped and destroyed and changed, and now it's covered over with plaster just so it holds up and the humidity and the birds don't shit on it. And like it's completely transformed its cultural context from when it was there, and it inspired these medieval peasants to pray and have reverence for God. And like you're the outsider. You know damn well it wasn't intended for you in 2026 or 20. What year is it? 25. And you have to have that awareness. And God, I'm going on a rant here, but just follow me. The Sailor Moon fandom. Holy shit. It's a romance story for preteen girls in Japan in the 90s. And you're crazy about the fact that Usagi had a little alcohol when she was underage and kissed in Tuxedo Mask. And you're like, oh, this violates my worldview currently, where that's not acceptable, and it ruins the media for me. And I'm like, can you remove yourself from your self-involved?
Is that not fair criticism?
It is. That's the thing.
The media for them.
That's the thing, Gizmos. You're totally right. It's
I get a
totally
sense you have
fair.
an axe to grind here.
Yeah, no, I do. It's a personal thing for me. But no, it's and this is the thing, because you're right, Gizmo. It's totally fucking fair. It's absolutely fair. That's a valid way of reading it, and you have the prerogative to do that. Reader response is a thing, and I appreciate it, and I like hearing that. And I just think it's on you to approach the work where it is the best and where it will be received the best, because you can go through life saying everything's shit because it doesn't fit your perfect idea of what media should be. But if you just approach it where it's at and then enjoy it as a way it was meant to be enjoyed, you'll find it's much better and the world is a happy place. All right, what were you going to say, Sai?
Yeah, I would push back on that.
Yeah, really? Was that too much?
Well, so I push back on the idea of consuming the work as it was meant to be enjoyed. It's like, well, how do we know how it was meant to be enjoyed necessarily?
Yeah, we're
gets into
Roland Barthes, Death of the Author, right?
Yeah.
This gets into like the video I wanted to bring up from Joe Pause and Select, and it might be honestly maybe my favorite video that he's done, which is funny because it's about a fucking sit stand desk that he got to review.
Yeah,
and the whole video.
That one. Yeah, I think I remember that one. Yeah.
And the basic takeaway from the video is that even something as seemingly straightforward and objective as this is a sit stand desk, is it worth your money, is influenced by all the kind of like personal baggage that you yourself are then bringing into that review and your interactions with that product. So I mean, shit, if we
So,
can't even determine whether or not I should buy the goddamn sit stand desk, I don't know what we can determine.
But doesn't that inspire you? Doesn't that make you happy that Joe's point there of like we're all going to have different ideas and there's no objectivity functionally is what you're getting at, right? That it's all through our dirty tinted lenses that we bring. Doesn't that make you happy in some way?
I think it's incredibly. Yeah. I think that's like what makes something so interesting.
That's why we do this, right?
So
go ahead.
I can agree with you. You'll have to excuse me because my voice is still.
I was throat fucking him earlier.
Yeah, Mumi is not 12 years old going through puberty. That was he's got an issue with his vocal cords right
That was 20 years ago. Okay.
Go ahead, Mumi.
I agree with you in so far as like when I present my experience in like a more like mediated sense. So if I like make a video, or if I write a review, or if I write up a think piece on something, it's generally because I want to write up something that I found that I appreciated like highly that I feel like is being missed.
Yeah.
So I agree in the sense of like I don't like to criticize things because that's usually when I'm criticizing something, it's because there's some kind of disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Like Orb this season. People really love Orb this season.
Yeah.
And when I see people talking about why they love Orb, it's a disconnect with why I dislike it. Like the things that they're appreciating about it are so far removed from like what my experience was with the show that I can't.
It's almost
be
like
on
the things that they
level.
like are the things that annoy us.
Yeah, my exact example for that was Attack on Titan. They're like, "Oh, it's so intense," and I was like, "Yeah, it's terrible. It's so intense. It's like crass. It's bad."
But I don't think that people should not criticize things from like different perspectives. So like your Dragon Ball Z example.
Yeah.
Saying like Dragon Ball Z is a terrible feminist thing. Like sure.
Yes.
I would say that was a bad criticism in the sense of it is malformed. It is just like it is bad from this lens, but it's not necessarily critiquing as to why it is bad in that lens. So it is bad in that sense. But like I think there could be value in critiquing something from that sort of lens.
Yeah.
So like Evangelion is like one of my favorite anime, right? So I get to between Evangelion and Madoka.
RFK Jr. right now.
between Evangelion and Madoka Magica, I get to have the wonderful experience of having two of the most divisive shows in anime associated with me. And so whenever anybody watches Madoka or Evangelion and has like something contrarian to say about it, I'm usually the first one to know. It's usually like, Mumi, why did you like episode 17 of Evangelion? And I'm like, what?
Mumi, you have the luxury of being annoyed by people both praising Evangelion and Madoka and also people who are shitting on it.
Yeah.
It's like, God fucking damn it. Stop saying that it like ruined magical girl anime.
So the interesting thing with Ava in tying it back to Kai's point of consuming media as meant to be consumed, how many people think that End of Ava is meant to be consumed as like some piece that's saying, I hate you, you fucking otaku pieces of shit. Why don't you fucking listen to me? That is such a widespread thing. And there was a 3-hour long video talking about this just last year, that was how that was supposedly meant to be consumed. And we're kind of talking about it on stream, and we're like, hey, there's a lot of information that contradicts that this is the way that it's meant to be consumed. Why are you positing that this is the way to consume End of Evangelion? I'm
gonna also have to fall back on my on McLuhan here, in that when we talk about the way something is meant to be consumed, we also do have to take into consideration the medium
Oh
that
boy.
it is in.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the way Evangelion was meant to be watched was on a television in the 1990s in Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we
Initially,
are
yeah.
watching it on our computers in United States or Germany or oh wait, no, Kai, fuck you. You're in Japan. I hate you.
Oh no, I'm back. I'm
Um,
back in America.
oh,
Yeah.
you're
No,
back?
I got a 9 to 5
USA,
desk job.
baby.
Bro, I'm working at a
Oh
credit
my
card company now. I'm back at a bank, bro.
oh
I
my
am
god.
like I bought shirts with collars the other day. I am like so
We are
fucking
so
square.
back.
I am
We are
so
so
square.
back.
Yeah, yeah.
um
No, I have
But
that
it's like
is like something to like consider absolutely I think and is often overlooked is like the the way in which you're meant to watch something is often in very literal ways just overlooked and very like it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
why are we not talking about these things as television shows that can be very useful sometimes. That's why
a lot of
every
the time.
My Hero
Yeah.
Academia season opens with a recap. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
to catch people back up, it's so because new people are watching
Right,
and they're
right.
like who the fuck are these characters.
I make that
That could come
argument.
up a lot when you're talking about prestige watching. It's like this is a
Prestige
TV
watching?
show, dude. Like it's airing once a yeah, prestige, like quote unquote prestige watching. I don't know if it's necessarily like
What's
an
that mean?
actual term. So
What?
think like when people are like, "Oh, dude, you gotta watch Breaking Bad. You gotta watch Game of Thrones. It's like the
Dude, it's
best television show ever."
peak
And it's like
fiction.
you only consume the best peak fiction, the
Oh, okay,
best, the
gotcha,
best
gotcha, gotcha,
ever.
gotcha. I thought you
That
were
I would call that prestige
I
watching.
thought you meant like prestiging, like going over level 100 and then going back around and watching it again.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
rewatch
Like,
Ava like
I've,
20
I've,
times,
I've
yeah.
prestige level 6 on Sailor Moon. I don't know. You know, I've seen it all the way through
damn.
6 times. I have stuff that I want to say.
Me
I
with
have
Twin
stuff that I
Peaks.
want to say. I want to jump in.
Go.
God.
I also would like to
go.
bring up an example, if I can, because I think the way media is meant to be consumed doesn't matter at all to me. I recently, or not actually not recently, a couple of years ago, we watched the show Joshi Raku. Does that mean
I've seen
anything
it,
to you
yeah.
guys?
I know.
It's
I
in my
love
anime club.
Rakugo girls.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I know
What?
the problem.
Why are we laughing? What? It wasn't a bad show.
No,
I
but I know where this is going.
Okay.
I mean, for me, I said in during the anime club meeting that this is one of the worst shows I've ever seen. And I stand by that because I was so incredibly fucking bored watching this show because I didn't understand the jokes, which
Mhm.
obviously
Yeah.
you can say is a problem with me because I don't understand Japanese culture and what they're talking about, basically. And the show
Yeah.
is technically not badly made, right? I
Right,
mean, everyone can look at this show and see, okay, this is competently made and the voice actors are good and everything technical is good about the show, but I absolutely hated watching it. So for me, it's one of the worst shows I've ever seen.
Okay.
Because yeah, stuff just flies over your head. We'll put a pin in that because I have a interesting thing to talk about that in the context of Makoto Shinkai.
I have
Don't
like
bring up
4
fucking
things that
Lucky
I've written down that the conversation's got away from, but you keep going. You keep going.
Well,
I
you
guess-
had something to bring up. Oh, I guess
Well,
I do.
Oh,
For that last thing, that you're just making the argument of why Nichijou is a better show than Joshiraku, right? Because Nichijou is more widespread and
Of course.
relatable, and that goes back to what we were saying earlier about the things that are more universal to the human condition are in some way better than more specific things.
Does that make it better
Mm.
though?
That's my claim. That's my claim.
But to cap off what I was saying with Evangelion, it's not so much the case anymore just because I've been in this fucking the trenches for 20 years now, ever since I watched Evangelion in 2004. But like I generally will appreciate when people have like different perspectives, even when they're like criticizing the show, right? Because then it's interesting to see from their perspective, like, oh, so what did you dislike about the show? Because then that can highlight things that maybe you didn't think about when you're watching the show,
Yeah.
or maybe it highlights things that you actually did appreciate about watching the show. Like the big one, I guess, would be like Shinji is a bitch, right? Oh,
Yeah.
he's such a fucking bitch. She doesn't get the robot. And it's like, yeah, but I appreciate that about the show. Not necessarily that you know how you're characterizing it that he's a bitch, but like the fact that he doesn't just get in the robot and fuck bitches and go Michael Bay on everyone, right? Like
Yeah.
I appreciate what the show is like commentating on and doing with that.
Well, that's it's
And I
clear
guess
that
that
in
kind of
Evangelion's a deliberate choice that's the way it is, you know. It's
yeah.
saying
And I guess
something
I can
with
kind of get into what you're saying with like how it's intended or something.
yeah.
That would be the
Yeah.
closest way that you could quote unquote objectively rate something is
Yep.
how what you think the show is trying to achieve and how
Yep.
well you think that show is achieving it.
Thank you for
But
that's
that's
my
impossible.
position.
I would argue that's impossible because all you're doing is when I try to rate Joshiraku, for example, objectively, I would have to speculate on how well the jokes work for someone that understands the cultural references they are making.
Right.
So how would I even start to do that?
You
How
can't
would I
use
put myself in the shoes of someone who has the cultural background?
you
I
say
can't.
you say I
It's
lack the
absolutely
necessary
impossible.
context to be able to consume this
Well,
accurately. So I say do not rate.
well,
Yeah.
this is where it gets interesting because it's also possible. Like, how do we talk about it in the context of stuff that we would consider dated? For example, I rewatched Welcome to the NHK maybe like a year ago. I don't know how much long ago, somewhat recently. And upon rewatch, I came away with so much more because I had learned it's
Yeah.
one of the first anime I'd ever seen, and I had learned so much in those like many years since I had initially seen it. Things regarding denpa, cults in Japan,
Yeah.
hikikomori,
Yeah.
just all this different sort of stuff, otaku culture. That when watching it, I was kind of taken aback by being like, "Oh my god, this is like the most 2007 anime I've ever fucking seen."
Right. The one that for me hits in the
Or
exact same way is Lucky Star. You know, Lucky Star after being an anime fan for 20 years hits
mhm.
real different. Yep.
Why'd you bring up Lucky Star? I hates Lucky Star.
I do
Oh.
hate Lucky Star to be fair,
No.
but that's another matter. Lucky Star for me is like a it's like a shitty podcast, but I'm not gonna get into that for the time being because I think it's also possible though. It's also possible that stuff which is more overt of in terms of what it is about can then paradoxically make it harder to understand. What do I mean by that? When I went and saw Suzume in the theaters, Makoto
Yeah.
Shinkai's latest movie,
With the chair.
there's a scene. Yeah, the movie is overtly about 311. And there's a scene in the movie where a character is flipping through their diary and they get to that date of 311 in their diary and everything is blacked out. Me watching the movie, I immediately understand, like, oh, that's fucking 311. I understand what that date means. I think
Um
I may have been the only person in the theater that did.
yeah.
So then you look at a movie
Well,
like Your Name or Weathering with You, which are also about 311, but because they're not doing that explicitly, it's more easy for an international audience who does not have that cultural perspective to understand it. Does that make them better by being less overt?
um
Ooh.
so I know that all three of us here
It's an
know what you're
interesting
talking
question.
about when you say 311. But for the viewers at home, why don't you tell them what 311 was and how now that makes Suzume better?
So 311 is the date of the famous infamous northern Japan earthquake and tsunami that hit
Oh yeah.
Fukushima. Um
It delayed the final two episodes of Madoka
and then
Magica. Yeah, back in 2011.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Um
like I remember.
That's
it's
actually
it's
true
this
to
I mean
yes.
you look at there's so much like disaster media in Japan
Yeah.
has just been like overtly like tied back to you look at like Shin
Yeah,
Godzilla,
no, you know Godzilla's about
Japan
the
sinks
nuclear
20 so,
bomb. Yeah,
so
yeah,
much stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, there's
Well,
also then the nuclear power plant. That's
so so
but
so
still.
so so the thing we're getting at here is grand narrative or this giant question that people have been dealing with for literally as long as art has existed is, does art require intent to function as art? So there are certainly
Yeah.
there I want to present you some examples here because there are certainly art that is made by bad creators or like that are not skilled enough at conveying the message that they set out to convey, and then
Yeah.
via reader
Yeah.
response it gets assimilated and it gets warped into something new, some new message or something.
Yes.
And probably the best example, the easiest example to go to is not School Days. What's the horror one that became a comedy? Boo, boo, boo. Come
There's a
on.
lot of those. Another?
With the no, they make Jew jokes the
Uh,
entire time. And
Oh, Ghost Stories? But
Ghost
that was
Stories,
even
yeah.
like
yeah.
oh.
So Ghost Stories was
That's-
intended to be a horror thing, right? And then through the translation, it becomes a different product, right?
Right.
It rewrote the script, right? But
Right.
you or
Right.
something
It's
something
very transformative to say the least.
something memey, something like The Room, right? Was that intended in the way that it is popularly consumed? And the answer is a lot of times
Depending on when
no,
you ask,
really.
Tommy Wiseau is maybe, because like
Right.
Tommy Wiseau is like flipped between it's a drama to they can tell it's a dark comedy, and it's like no, it's
Have
not.
you ever watched
There
an
is an
anime?
interesting.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say there are cases though, like it is possible to have art without intention, or at least like intelligible intention. Like if we go back to Barth's
Death of the
original
Author?
Death of the Author essay, I believe, if I remember correctly, like the main example he goes to is auto writing. People who are just kind of like, just writing, and it's just like, they're not even necessarily thinking about the words that are like being put down. It's just kind of like
Mm,
stream of subconscious in a sense.
mm.
So it also then becomes a matter of like, how are we even defining intention? Can intention does that only include conscious efforts, or can we also then
Right.
include subconscious
Nature,
things going
right?
on as well?
I
Yeah.
mean, you could argue
Mhm.
like the intent to create something that is auto writing would be intent.
Yes, and that's what
True,
that's
but
what I
then
would
how?
say.
I mean, it certainly succeeds at being auto writing by being the thing that it is.
Vibes and moods.
What
yeah.
I would question is how much does intent actually matter
Yes.
in the sense of like
That's
so I think of this with like I was on a forklift one day. I was driving around thinking to myself,
I'm just now learning that Mumi is forklift certified.
Yeah,
By the way, I did not know this.
Well, he
before.
didn't
I am
say he's
forklift
forklift
certified, yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Holy,
OSHA
he is.
forklift
Holy
certified.
shit! Wow, goddamn, we
He
got
was
a professional here
playing
with us.
Shenmue actually.
I was driving the forklift while listening to emo music, and it occurred to me. I thought to myself, I was like, because I'm not super into music like I am anime, so I'm looking at music from a different perspective than I would like anime, and I'm thinking
Mhm.
about it. I'm like, we judge music. So I guess to like simplify it for like the intent purposes.
Mhm.
If you're taking something like a Fallout Boy, the
Mhm.
intent is very clear in their lyrics, right? And it's very simple melodies. It's not like super complex what the fuck they're going on. They're going down in an earlier round. They're going down swinging. Does and by most metrics that people judge music, that would make it inferior to a lot of other things, right? Like they would
Mhm.
judge like, oh, the melodies in this are more complex. There's a greater depth of instrumentation. The lyrics are painting a beautiful picture in these other ones, and they're not like, and it gets across the experience while not necessarily being overt with the lyrics, right?
Mhm.
But then paradoxically, you come back around, you're like, but does that make the Fallout Boy song objectively worse, or does that make it something that's objectively something else?
Yeah.
In the sense of like, does it not make it an objectively better emo song that it somehow perfectly encapsulates the teenage angst of just writing stupid shit on your journal when you're 12 years old?
Well, so you're saying
Right?
Fallout
Yeah.
Boy is a perfect 10 out of 10 Fallout Boys. In Fallout Boy
Right.
metrics, Fallout Boy is acing it, right? And to some
Yeah,
extension, genre is an extension of that, right? Like, what do you
Right,
think
right.
Yeah.
I talk about the magical girl genre. What do you think the magical girl genre should be? Is it Melmo, or is it Cardcaptor Sakura? And like, what elements do you think should be in there? And how far is that useful? And then we're back at like, how are we making any type of qualitative judgments on anything at all
Mhm.
ever? I have
Uh,
an answer to that if you want it.
Oh.
Why do
Sure, yeah,
people?
if you
I
got
was
Why
gonna
not?
say there's also a complication though. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
must interrupt because
I know it's a
so there is a
conversation where you want to interrupt. I
complication.
get it.
I have an answer if you want it. Well, I was
Hold on, because I may
I'm dying.
say something that could
Oh,
possibly
oh shit.
ruin that answer, which
Oh
is
shit.
what if
Oh, you ruined the answer after he gives it.
the I don't know, I'm an asshole.
It's classic.
What if the
It's
intention of a work
objectively
of
better.
art?
It's objectively better for the drama of listening to this podcast to preemptively shit all over my answer. Go for it.
I thought it'd be
What
objectively
if
better to do it after.
what if the intention of the work of art is to fail? I'm not talking about like, self-aware Marvel movies being like, guys, isn't this something? No bullshit like that.
Yeah, yeah.
There is an
Although
interesting
maybe,
piece. There's an interesting music piece called Failing, which is a very difficult piece for solo string bass. And basically what it is the performer is expected to play what is on the sheet music. But what is on the sheet music is not just the music for the cello or the solo string bass or whatever the hell. It also includes the words that they are like supposed to be saying at the same time, and they're supposed to like be playing this while also maintaining like a casual conversational tone. And it's in a very metatextual way. It's kind of like, well, if you're doing this correctly and you're not failing, then aren't you failing to perform the piece?
yeah. Well, that's
It's a really
the
funny
that's it. And then you're
like
making the plot. You're
paradox.
making the plot of The Producers with Nathan Lane, where they try and make a Broadway musical that fails, right? And they fail at doing that,
Yes,
right?
of course.
And that's
Yes,
very
yes.
funny.
Springtime for Hitler in Germany.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
course.
Thank you for being educated and cultured.
Yes.
I don't,
Now continue, please.
I don't even remember where we were at. I'm gonna go back and talk about a couple of the things because I don't even remember
Oh
what I was gonna say
no.
about whatever it was. See, isn't that better for the drama?
Damn, you demolished it.
Didn't we make an objectively better podcast and more interesting podcast because of that?
No, this has been a waking nightmare.
Okay.
to listen to.
Mumi, you mentioned negative criticism back in the day. I had something written down for negative criticism. Any type of
Right.
criticism, positive or negative, takes fucking effort. You know how hard it is? And I know you guys do because you make content. You make content. But like, do you know how difficult it is to put together coherent thoughts and record it and put it out and edit it? And like how much time it takes to even get a criticism out for like 500 people to watch your shitty review and then, forget about it. There's no reward. You don't get any money. And still you do it. And still you come up with a coherent thought and you pursue that. You get better at criticism because it's fun, because you think there's value there, because that's what makes you human is to engage with these types of discussions and ideas. So
No, I'm just gonna I have an idea. I'm just gonna tweet it out, and I'm not gonna think about it after, and then people are gonna get mad at me.
yeah, if you're
I'm not
popular
gonna get
enough,
better
you
at
can get away with
anything.
it. No, but and that's why on my channel I've almost never done negative criticism, which is weird. Because I don't think that type of poignant, detailed criticism really works when it's negative. You can go through something I hate. Like
It really
But
depends.
ranting about stuff is so fun, though.
yeah.
I
maybe
wouldn't
should
be
do it.
against doing negative criticism if I had like something I felt was insightful in some way.
Right.
Yeah,
But like generally, if again, like I said, if I'm negative on something, I'm disconnected. I'm not engaging with it in the ways that other people are. So another
yeah.
person
So
might.
this is the enjoyment versus execution thing, right? Like in any type of content that I would put out would be like the execution here is really bad and you can't swing the camera around like this and handshakers gives me a headache when I watch it and you shouldn't give people a headache when you watch. But if you're approaching it from, like you said earlier, with like the lack of lens to fully understand it, then what are you doing? You like your criticism isn't that useful. And this is kind of the Dragon Ball is a bad
Yeah.
feminist show that you're reading, that like that sentiment is good, but like you kind of wipe that away in 1 second with like, yeah, it was never intended to be that.
Right.
Or,
Well, what we're talking about there is almost like constructive criticism. We're talking about it as if this is like, as if we're like talking to the people who made it directly, and we're like, these are things that I think you could do better in order to better like actualize and communicate
Yeah.
the ideas that you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if your point is basically just like, shut the fuck up, don't communicate those ideas, then it's kind of like, well,
Yeah.
fuck you.
Yeah. That's not very good
It's-
criticism. That's F minus
Right.
criticism.
I mean, negative criticism doesn't have to be completely negative, right? Whenever I
Oh, no.
I do like reviews of our trashy shows on our podcast, even if I rant about the show and I think it's bad, I still try to bring up some good points that like that the show communicates good. Okay.
You can appreciate stuff as well, like Red Letter Media is like best of the worst, as they watch like terrible movies, but they're also coming at it from the perspective of they themselves have had experience making terrible movies, so they're able to
Right.
appreciate like all the sorts of like silly things that you
Yeah.
do into making like schlocky B movies.
This
That-
is
that-
something.
that-
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say they had one of my favorite like critiques or reviews or whatever of a bad movie where they're talking about, I forget what movie it was. It was one of the Wheel of the Worst ones. It's one of the 3 that they do, right? And they're talking
Yeah.
about this movie where like there's a point where someone gets sucked into a book and like they fold in half into the
Oh
book.
yeah,
And they were like, that's so schlocky, but that looks so fucking awesome. Like how
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it looks so fun
what
to
they would
do.
have
Yeah.
to do to
It wraps
do
back
that.
around. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
an
like-
appreciation of the filmmaking itself almost.
Yeah. It's
Right.
kitschy.
So like
but,
that's
yeah.
it's a criticism, but like it's a one that comes from a place of appreciation, and that's
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
what I like about their content whenever they do that kind of thing.
Right. So I would just be dismissive, and I would be like, why the fuck would anybody want to watch shonen boys throwing power beams at each other? Like, oh God, give me a power friendship. But yeah, this is what I wanted to say. This is my response earlier. And have you guys met artists, like people that do art? Have you ever just like
No.
taught
Define art.
Yeah, right. But if you've ever just been to like an artist alley or had been friends with an artist, they're just like
yeah.
the good ones, not people that are just fucking around. The good ones are like, I
Not the
suck.
bad artist.
No, the good artists are like, I suck. I am so bad. I hate everything about this. I have to learn all my Photoshop brushes. I don't know how to shade. I gotta do this and this and this. And then their inherent like I don't know, it even extends to the realm of like self-hatred, but it's really just being critical and seeing your own work through that lens. That is the single thing that allows them to improve. And the whole argument for subjectivity versus objectivity is ridiculous, because every time I've come up with like somebody that I truly consider an artist, it's that they know inherently that it's a completely futile, pyrrhic, Sisyphean struggle to get better at something, and yet they embrace it, and they're like, gonna do it. Here I go. I have to struggle because that's what makes it all meaningful.
Well, this is something that comes up even like when making like videos and stuff, is once you spend enough time just working on something, you kind of just like lose your ability to really like perceive it in a way where it's just like, that's just what the video is. And it's, I've been working on it for so long that it's like, I can't even go back and like fix that stuff now.
Yeah,
it just is what it is. And it's, and you gotta like, you gotta just like let it be. After the video has to come out, and if you're just an absolute perfectionist, then you're never gonna get anything done.
Not a perfectionist angle, but though I think that's it. But the idea that that you worked hard and you improved your art, and now your art is better than it used to be. And
on the other hand, there's, you can improve in ways that no one will ever fucking appreciate.
Sure.
Getting like better audio and stuff is like that's something that I've really had to like learn more and more. I'm still learning when it comes to
and
like
this podcast right here. Like if I hadn't, if you hadn't done all this stuff, we would all be peaking in different levels, and then recording this bed. We'd have these animated
completely
little
unlistenable.
Yeah, it
That
would
sound
be
even
terrible.
worse.
But we worked at this, and we have done this for years and years and years, and we've struggled and we've improved. And like that, because we have.
Then I watch a video that has terrible audio, and I cynically think to myself, and it has like millions of views, and I cynically think to myself, like, yeah, people just don't fucking care anyway.
But no, whether it's effective or not is a different story. We can argue about that at the time. But the fact that we chose to improve our audio quality, you know, and
Mhm.
then people can choose to improve their shading or their depth and their backgrounds and whatever. That,
Yeah.
you know, that inherent struggle. If you're like Gizmo and you're an absolute subjectivist, that you say everything can't be judged anyway, then you're throwing away all the effort and work that these artists have done over the years, because none of it matters, and the thing that they were in the beginning is just as good as the thing they are now.
No, I
Mhm.
mean that's not true. Clearly, and I would also say you can obviously talk about objective things in anime, right? It's not like it's completely meaningless. I'm just saying that the things that you can judge objectively in anime all serve the same purpose. They serve to improve your enjoyment of the anime. And how much they improve that, for example, is also completely subjective.
Oh, can I, one small thing. I don't think the objective has to be enjoyment. I think that very strongly. I think there are
Oh,
great
that's
anime
interesting.
that are designed to upset you, to off-put you, to make you feel bad about things. And the idea behind art is to challenge yourself to be a better person. And I think that some of my favorite media does this with aplomb.
But could you give an example? Because
Yeah.
I'm not sure I
Wonder Egg
know what you
Priority,
mean.
which I actually, if you guys are interested in these types of long discussions, Sai and Mumi talked about the ending of Wonder Egg Priority many, many years ago. And
Many years ago.
that is an ending in a show that is not designed to make you feel good about things. There's some positive things, certainly, but the way the
Yeah, like
show,
bittersweet endings and stuff.
yeah, you can interpret it positively, and I do. I think it's ultimately hopeful, but it is a show that asks you to embrace these upsetting, difficult things and challenge yourself by thinking about them. And I think
Okay,
your Mummy, your Evangelions, your Madokas, any type of thing that gets this type of acclaim is a show along those
I still haven't seen the ending of One Egg Priority, by the way. But I assume that you are talking about like sad stories, for example, where like
lines.
the
No.
main character dies at the end, for example, stuff like that.
Maybe subversive.
Yeah, it could be. I'm talking more like the power fantasies, right? Like you log on to a video game, or like an isekai, right? Like the idea here is, or a harem is like, oh yeah, I wanna have sex with all the girls or something, and then you've got something like a School Days where you're like, okay,
Like, oh no,
yo,
what's happening?
no.
This is terrible.
What if I don't get
But
this fantasy and get rewarded for it, and what if it ends up badly? And yeah, it could be an inversion, it could be a thing, but it's mostly just something that makes the viewer feel uncomfortable or negative.
It's
mm,
a weird question when it comes to enjoyment, because I feel like there's a way to define enjoyment in which it almost
Yeah,
becomes
you're
tautological
right. You're right.
and
Right. That
doesn't
that
really
yeah,
like
I
describe people's experiences all that
I
well.
enjoyed
Yeah.
Wonder Egg Priority because it made me upset and think about the world and life. So yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like, yeah, I enjoyed come and see, even though I got out of the theater, came home, and like laid down in my bed and was just I felt physically sick the
Right.
next day.
I
right. Or
enjoyed
horror movies, for example, that
Sure. Sure.
are so
Yeah.
intense that you cramp up and it feels unbearable almost, but it's still kind of enjoyable at the end of the day.
Yeah. So if we're defining enjoyability like that, I think that so many people in today's media landscape are just like, video games have to be fun, and I'm like, fuck, no, they don't.
What does that yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because my idea of fun is very different from other people's idea. I like idle games, all right?
Right.
IDLE, not IDOL for context.
Right.
Yeah.
Where I like just watching numbers get bigger over time.
Yeah.
Number go up.
Or well,
Yes, line go up.
I like having an engaging story, and then seeing the futility of the world play
See?
out on the screen, and then have to play it out in the ending credits. And you should go watch my video on Nier Automata.
You see, I don't like video games with stories.
Yeah. Oh, and
That's
this
like
is
where Mumi and I really disagree.
yeah. This is so. Let's get back to the diatribe. This was all just talking about our grading systems. Thank you, Gizmo, for giving us your grading system. 40 minutes ago. And so my grading system is I am not an action guy. I appreciate good directing and I appreciate good
Mhm.
sound and everything, but I
Yeah.
really do not care about the shiny lights. So
I'm in the exact same.
right.
Lex Torius and I got into an argument about this
Yeah,
as
he's
well,
great.
where
He's
like Lex
great. I love him.
Torius, he gets way more out of that sort of stuff. Whereas for me, not only it's I just it just doesn't click for me. If anything, the kind of action I appreciate is like really limited stuff.
Yeah.
Like the when we had this conversation, I was watching OG Kinnikuman, which is
Oh
very
boy.
limited in terms of its
Yeah. Yeah.
animation, and I love it.
Yeah. um So no, yeah, no, I totally agree with you that like I don't have a rule of cool bone in my entire body. I really
Mhm.
do not. So all this leads to my kind of aversion of all things battle shonen. Um, but for me, the writing is very heavy, and if there's some degree of meta, like a Princess
Mhm.
Tutu or a Madoka, or if there's some well-written, even non-meta scenes, like I just watched A Place Further in the Universe with my mom. Um, yeah, just the reflective writing. I have a video on my channel of that stuff. So the writing always hits me hard. But for my grading systems,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, so yeah, so like it's like I like good action certainly, but it's not
No,
enough.
you don't. Stop lying to everybody.
But it's just not enough to like sell me on something. I need to have something like
Right, right,
action for me is
Yes,
like
right. So,
supplemental.
so
there
my
has to be purpose behind the action,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's always my main thing. When I watch shonens, for example, Jujutsu Kaisen season 2, I really hated how they were pacing the action in the fights because it was just
Mhm.
fight after fight after fight after fight. And
Oh,
it
I
and
loved
it
it.
got so repetitive and boring for me. And a lot of people like I don't understand why I don't like this, but because it's so clean. The action looks so good and it's so well choreographed and stuff. But at some point, it loses all meaning when
yeah.
it's just the same thing over and over again.
I don't have that lens. And I have been told, like, Kai, can you not shut the fuck up and turn your brain off? And I'm like, one, that is the most offensive thing anyone has ever said to me, and two, no. So, I'm insufferable after we got out of Everything Everywhere and All at Once. And then they were like, Kai, you need to shut the fuck up. You are insufferable. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, the way I judge things is by I conceive of anything being done better or more purposefully or
Mm.
more efficaciously. Is there any way to improve on the thing that I just watched? And if I can't think of a way, then I rated it a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
And then
But
we go
even if you
down
can
from there.
think of a way, does that mean that it would actually improve it?
Yeah. And I think through those, I spend a lot of time thinking like, nah, would that, yeah, would it,
It
is it
may
just
improve it for
me?
you.
Do I want something different that this show is just
Yeah.
clearly asking, not fulfilling that need that I have, Um,
Would
yeah.
this thing would changing this make me enjoy it more, but then
Right.
literally everyone else hate it?
Somebody who
Yeah, again,
was it Sen in our Discord Gizmo that was like you're just turning this into Princess Tutu, and I was like yes I am. I am.
again,
I mean,
this goes back to what I was saying with like scores are meaningless outside of the context of your rest of your scores.
Yeah. Or
You
the
saying
Yeah.
that, Kyra.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you saying that about Princess Tutu reminded me that when we were watching Gundam Witch from Mercury,
Yeah.
and I was talking about all the stuff I disliked about it. Everyone kept fucking telling me, "It's like, dude, you just want this to be Utena."
Yeah,
Like, really? I
that's the
haven't
same
fucking
criticism
seen
I got. That's the same criticism. I was like, I watched the first episode and I'm like, oh, I get the references, I get the choo choo. Go, we're cool.
But this is
And
happening
then,
to me without having seen Utena, which
yeah.
is hilarious.
Oh yeah. That's right. You haven't seen it. Jesus, we did
No,
that
I have
whole
not, so-
fuck. My God, you mentioned that on one of your
We just-
recent videos, and I was like, what the
We
fuck?
just converged on the
Shit,
same
man.
point. Though.
Well, yeah, and this is kind of what makes things good is they keep getting brought up in references again and again. But I had the same thing where by episode 2, it was clear that it was doing Gundam politicking bullshit, and I was like, that's not what I'm here for.
I don't care. Oh, it's done in such a lame way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of time when people criticize stuff and are doing, there's like almost like this projection of like
Yes.
this perceived objectivity where it's like, well, I like good things and I don't think this is good, so therefore it is bad
Yeah.
or is not good.
It's my
Because like,
objectivity, you know?
because like even I, the most boring taste in anime, I can I can appreciate things from varying different lenses, right? I appreciate Jujutsu Kaisen, like the fights in Jujutsu Kaisen season 2 and like action and stuff. I can get really fucking like into a JoJo fight and be like, "Oh,
Uh,
this is interesting because like the characterization of Josuke and how he learned how to do this thing from Jotaro is how he's utilizing it in the final fight." And like I can get into that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I can also get into like the stupid like, you know, Oscar and Marie Antoinette go to a ball
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's
they're
fucking
wearing the
nice,
same
isn't
dress,
it?
and I'm like,
Yeah.
holy shit, what are they gonna do? They're wearing the same dress.
Right.
I guess that begs an interesting question, is that if disliking something comes down to just like like to at least to some extent a matter of preference and taste and just perspective,
Yeah.
does that then imply a goal to reach a point where you can then theoretically enjoy anything?
Right, where you have as many hats as Mumi can wear. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, even as I say, even like as many
I
hats
mean,
as
I
I
tried
have, I watch like a fucking mecha like Dogram, and I'm like,
it.
I don't have this hat in my repertoire.
Yeah.
I recognize there is a hat here to be had. And
Yeah.
like you talk to people, and they're like, what? You didn't like the fucking when they were sat down for like 2 episodes, we're talking about how they were gonna build a farm and all the logistics of the agriculture that they were gonna have to feed people. And I'm like, no, I
No.
was no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because art can be that specific. There's there's
Mhm.
fucking Sonic OCs where you just like in no universe could I possibly appreciate this in the way that you appreciate this. I just don't
Mhm.
have it in me. I am not that person. And I don't know that I can work to be that person.
Yeah, I think that's always like the question is like, do you have that in you? I mean, for me, it's like I always try to go into some stuff with it with an open heart and an open mind, but I still have my preferences at the end of the day. If anything, something I was thinking is that like in a descriptive sense, just kind of like looking at it from an outsider's perspective, the way I score stuff is kind like it is reflective of my own enjoyment, but that enjoyment is kind of couched in me watching something and me kind of like assessing like, well, what is it trying to do and how well does it do that? But then also beyond that, it's also a question of, well, how much do I really even like what it's doing in the first
Yeah.
place? If
Yeah.
if it does something really really well, but it does diddly dick for me, then it's
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So
well, that sucks.
this is what we're talking about. This is a show that you think is good that you don't like as much as it should because you can't appreciate it in the right way. This is a show that is or there is shows that are quite by any objective metric that you want to go by skill, by efficacy, by the things that we're not talking about but we should be by quantifiable metrics or popular consensus are bad, but that you
Mhm.
but still fulfill that need that you have very specifically and it's targeted directly to you. And I'm like, oh
Mhm.
shit, this is another really really fucking bad season of Symphogear, but it still has the heart of a magical girl show and it knows how to say the right things. And when Hibike punches the things and is like starts singing about her
Exactly,
inner
yeah.
conflict, I'm like, god damn it, yes, that is, I do appreciate that, I do love that. And
I don't care if everyone else hates it. It's my vibe.
it's
God damn it.
definitely a 4 out of 10 objectively, but I'm rating it 7 out of 10.
Right, because it just resonates with you so much. I mean, like the opposite of that is like, I don't really like Madoka that much.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's a bad show. I think I just hate Genorabuchi.
sure. Like Lane, right? Lane's the example for me.
Right.
Like I get it. I get what you're saying. I get your essays. I get it. I do not care for it.
Or Gurren Lagann.
Yes, Gurren
is like
Lagann's a great one for me. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Gizmo, what's your pick for like either so bad but you love it or you should like it more but you don't?
I mean, I definitely have a lot of guilty pleasures, even though I should probably argue for not calling them guilty pleasures. Something like Rent a Girlfriend, for example, that is clearly not written like um
It's not
uh,
aiming for the stars, but it
Yeah.
doesn't.
yeah,
It has
yeah.
low
It
aspirations. Yeah.
doesn't have the deepest characters, and you know exactly what it's trying to do, who it's pandering to. But I just love the show, and
Mhm. Well, it's the thing. Not everything needs to be peak fiction at the end of it. I
Yeah,
think that's like a
maybe,
really
right? Yeah. You know?
like everyone is like, well, Legend of the Galactic Heroes is the greatest anime, the greatest story ever told, and is something that all art should aspire to. And that will be that person's last words before I beat them in the head with a hammer.
Exactly.
Well, it's interesting because like this kind of goes back to what I was saying,
Like prestige watching.
prestige watching, but like I kind of hinted at it when I was talking about people don't talk about with TV, like in the context of being a TV show.
Hmm.
People
Mhm.
don't really appreciate the context in which they watch something enough, right?
Yeah.
If you
Oh,
watch
yeah.
Breaking Bad week to week as it's airing over those 5-6 years, however long it was, your experience is objectively different from someone who binged watched it all after the last season ended and the last episode aired,
Mhm.
and they just watched it all in a
Absolutely.
weekend.
Yep. I have a
And
great
It's like trying
example
to
of
watch a
this.
movie in a noisy theater. It's like I'm trying to watch
Yeah.
Hayao Miyazaki's latest movie, Boy and the Heron, and it's a very quiet movie. Very, very not a lot of music, just like very like, small sounds going on. And then this motherfucker in my ear is just chewing popcorn with his mouth open. And I walk out of the theater, I'm just covered in his blood.
Yeah.
This
You
is
have a lot
why
of
I
violence
hate
in your heart, Si. But
There
the,
really
Right.
the
is.
positive
this is why-
example for me was Avatar: The Last Airbender. I have a video on my channel before I started talking about anime about how good the episodic writing in Avatar: The Last Airbender is.
Oh yeah.
How
yeah.
like you get the character stuff as like long-term rewards for fans that are watching, but every episode is just a self-contained cartoon story. 22 minutes, here we go. You know?
I really
Look-
appreciated that rewatching episodes of it as an adult, being like, "Holy shit, this is kind of like," because it's like you're not thinking about the overarching story when you're watching it
Yeah.
as a kid on TV. You're
Yeah.
gonna miss episodes. But then it's like, yeah, you watch it front to back, and it's like, God damn, this is.
Yeah, but then you get to the after watching it, and then you get all the character stuff bit by bit every episode, and by the end you're like, damn, Sokka is a motherfucker, isn't he? And you believe it when Mai says, I love him more than I fear you, and I was like, fuck, man, fuck.
God damn.
Yeah.
And this is why I hate like prestige Netflix culture, whatever. Because there are so many shows that air in a season that when you're watching week to week, they're enjoyable. Like you're just watching a 25-minute romp, like on a Friday or something, or a Thursday, whenever it airs, and then you wait for the next week, and it's all kind of in moderation. But if you recommend fucking Puniru Kawaii Slime to somebody after it's already aired, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go watch it all tonight," and they go
Yeah.
watch 12 episodes of it, their experience is gonna be much different from yours. And and if they're like, "Oh, well, that was fucking garbage because I couldn't like latch
Oh
onto
yeah, that's a
some
good point.
like objectively great story that I could watch within one
Yeah,
night,"
yeah.
it's like, no, that's not how you're meant to consume it. Like,
Yeah.
It's
like-
interesting.
Binging something can definitely be the not a good experience for like slice of life anime, for example.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Also,
I had to watch what was the one no Biori for year-end
No
review
Biori, yeah.
things, and I chugged all of no Biori, and by the end I was
my
just like, it's a
God.
great show, don't get me wrong, it's actually legitimately good, but by the end my brain was like oozing out my ears, and I was like, Renge, whatever.
Yeah, I did the same for my anime club too. And that's another thing that especially if you do reviews like on podcasts and stuff, sometimes you watch stuff that you don't actually want to watch, and it becomes worse and worse with
Yeah.
each episode.
Mhm.
And
If you're
it's
like,
not
yeah.
necessarily that the show gets worse, it's just your perception, because you
Your experience of
you
it, yeah.
made up your mind, you think this show is bad, but you have to keep watching, and you find things that to criticize. Basically, you're
It
just
becomes
looking for stuff to
self-harmonized.
hate.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like, and maybe this goes back to what we were talking about anime invites being rated in some way, and that anime has hit the Western sphere right as the internet became popular, right? And,
Yes.
and like having an opinion on anime is the goal instead of meeting the media where it's at, or consuming it, or watching it for yourself in betterment of yourself. It's like, the second that you're going in, and like I had to watch Zenshu because somebody recommended it to me, currently airing thing by Mappa, And yeah, it was
You loved
that.
it?
Huh? What?
And you loved it?
No, I did not care for it. It was a bit,
Oh my
it wasn't
god.
terrible. It wasn't, 4 out of 10, but it was still like I had to go in, and every time I was thinking of like, why is this character not hitting for me? Why do I not care about Luke Braveheart or whatever the fuck his name is? I
So
Mhm.
are you engaging with Zenshu in the meta context
yeah.
of it being a love letter to in like the production side of things, and like her finding her first love was the medium itself of anime?
Right.
Like, is that
You know what did that better? What was the one Shirobako? Man, Andre's Chucky.
I mean,
That
Shirobako is kind of different.
I think it's kind of
It's
the
a love
same
it's a love letter to
anime
this
production.
is yeah, the anime production, like the process,
Yeah.
but this is like a love letter in to anime in the sense of like, so there's like an episode where she summons Tiger Mask. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like Serval Mask or something. I don't know. It's whatever the
Right,
knockoff
right,
is, but
right.
it's basically it's Tiger Mask. And then Tiger Mask, that her summoning that then inspires another character to then want to be like Tiger Mask.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
by wanting to
I
be
get
like
it.
Tiger Mask, like
Yeah.
you get to see this whole like thing
I
going
get
on,
it.
and then like it's all about like first loves and stuff. So like I don't know,
Yeah.
like this again goes back to
Well,
the different perspectives of which we're approaching the show.
right, that's a good reading of Zenshu movie, and that's like clearly, obviously the intended reading, right? Like the point of why you make something like Zenshu. Um, I think that if I give a criticism, then it has to like then go into more nuanced things of like, was I relating enough to the main character in the way that I was on board with her emotional state or anything like that when she saw that, or like what broke down for me and kept me from really appreciating that, because I certainly
What's
do see
interesting
and respect your reading.
Yeah, what's interesting about it is like the most common critique I see is that the world is because a lot of people are expecting Zenshu to be like Page Master or something, where she's gonna go into like different anime worlds or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, that'd be cool.
And the biggest critique is usually like, oh, the world of Tale of Perishing is like boring
Eh,
or it's not well written or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
But it's
but it's not.
interesting
Yeah, it's a
because that's intended.
yeah, it's a reflection of this like childhood movie that she saw as and
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's a direct commentary because like she recognizes this is not a good film.
yeah, yeah,
She points out things that she like latched onto as a kid, like, oh, they never explained this character's motivations. And it was just something that always stuck with me because I never understood why they did what they did. And it's like saying things that like to you or me or Sai, whoever, we're sitting there watching it like that would make a terrible film. Like, you don't know
yeah,
why half the characters are doing what they're doing,
yeah,
but to her, when she was 8 years old, however old she was, like, she latched onto these things, and it was such a formative experience for her that it then went on to where she's now having to reconcile that being almost like her first love and what made her pursue her life choices,
yeah.
while also acknowledging it's not a good movie.
Well, so yeah, in that way, it's a meta thing about not only production but criticism and growing up and how you consume media and what do you get out of media.
Nostalgia, rose tinted
Yeah,
glasses.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, I had to cough. Um,
oh my god.
yeah,
Continue.
that's why I really love Zenshu, is that kind of meta level of like being blind to the things that are obvious in front of you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
She is
It's
approaching the romance aspect of her film that she's trying to work on. I'm dying. And she's
really
like,
Oh
"Oh,
my god.
I've never experienced love like romantically."
yeah,
And then as she's trying to parse through these feelings, she's then confronted with the fact that she has that had that feeling, that experience with this movie.
yeah. That it's
Mumi trying to
reflect.
parse. We talk about parsing through her feelings as he's trying to not die. It's really funny.
Try.
See, this is what I'm talking about. That criticism takes effort, and you gotta struggle
Um,
to get your ideas out on the world.
But it's interesting when you brought up Netflix in the context of prestige watching. It's interesting because I
well,
remember
weekly binging culture.
uh Well, it's interesting because a couple months ago, Netflix basically put out this thing where it's like they are going to be putting changes into their content in order to be commensurate for like second to screen viewing. They're going to have characters, say what they're doing rather than
Oh
just having them
God,
do it on
Oh
really?
screen.
God.
Yeah. This is like a thing that they've
Wow.
like done, and I was just like, of course, everyone reacted being like, "That is the lamest thing I've ever heard."
Destroying
And
art. Yeah.
again, I was just thinking to myself, "Yeah, McLuhan stays winning. How does he
Well,
keep? He can't keep getting away with it."
Then it just becomes a podcast, right? Like, right?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
It becomes a Fall Out Boy song.
Well, that's
It's not
because and this applies to like television as well. It's like when we talk about like the rule of show don't tell or whatever. That's
right.
generally more applicable to like movies, because when you're watching a movie in a theater, you're locked the fuck in.
Yeah.
That's the sole thing you can really look at is the goddamn screen. But television, it has to like acknowledge the fact that you are there are other
Right,
things in your home competing with your attention. Maybe you're cooking, maybe you have kids, maybe you're doing like other stuff. So as a result, it kind of does need to supply you with more information. It needs to break that show don't tell rule. And I think this Netflix thing itself is even like an
Yeah.
extension of that.
It
so
could be an art
when we
form,
talk about
right?
how you're
You
supposed to
know,
watch something,
we
maybe
can't
you're
be
supposed to watch
dismissive.
stuff and not pay the fuck attention.
Yeah.
maybe you're supposed to watch while scrolling.
Yeah, and this is
TikTok
this is
on
what
your
this
phone.
is this is to take it more broadly. To take it more broadly, we don't want to be dismissive of other art forms or other whatever.
No,
If this is a thing, you could do something like that well in a way that says something even meta or retroactively about it. But we want
Absolutely.
to
I don't like the idea of like giving notes though and being like, you need to like change, you need to like
yeah.
shift your artistic vision to do such and
But
such.
This is why I said how much
when something becomes good, or like something
Mhm.
becomes a standard way of doing things, or an established practice in any type of media, whatever that media is, it's because it's effective in some way, right? Is
Clickbait.
Yeah, or we could talk about viewer engagement. I was thinking more things like the Dutch angle is good for conveying
yeah.
being confused and things like that. But I think this goes onto like works themselves, or general works that get replicated, or things that get somebody puts an Astro Boy or something, or Mazinger or Big O or something, and then there's like robots are cool, right? And then people make more robot shows, and they're like, whoa, robots, and then it's a genre, and then it has its own conventions, and then you have the Etano Circus and all and everything.
Yeah.
Right. So
See, I would go even more
girls in it.
yeah,
I would
or
go
cute
even
girls
more
doing cute things.
subjective.
Yes, exactly. Like character design. You could talk about this. One of the videos I got to do is
Oh,
like
yeah.
a Kyoto Animation character design from the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya and like Clannad, and like how it blew the fuck up, and Kaon
that
and,
era?
like,
Yeah,
created
yeah.
Moe as we know it, and whatever. Anyway, Shoko Ikeda, look her up. She's she passed away in the arson attack.
Oh,
See-
I'd have stuff to say about that in terms of like around that, because around that time, that's also like when you get what's the goddamn show, Train Man, Densha
Oh, Densha
Otoko,
Otoko, yeah.
and that's like when moe became like a taboo word among
Yeah.
otaku because
I
the Big
would-
Bang Theory started using it.
See, I would say that I would go even more subjective with this and say that this is all a matter of like cultural perspective.
Right.
Mhm.
Because like when you point to like stuff like the Dutch angle and all that, like this is leaning into like the Western visual database.
Right.
Of,
Everything's
like,
a database.
storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go on.
So like
Yes.
we have built up this database, and like now we have like codified it and kind of expanded on it in such a way that we are now judging things as being bad or good based off said database. But this database is pretty arbitrary, honestly.
Yeah.
Like you take the Dutch angle.
the
The Dutch angle has a rationale behind it.
I would, yes.
But
I,
it's like
rationale.
people get acclimated to stuff as well. It's like when people first saw movies, there was a
Yeah.
train, and they thought the fucking train was going to come out of the screen and hit them. And
Yeah.
eventually,
yeah,
people just
whether it's a
kinda
chicken
learned,
or an
like,
egg problem, right? A cultural canon is a cultural canon and a database that we can
Yes.
pull from. And like everybody that's making anime has seen Evangelion and like all these things. you can't art is not made in a vacuum, right? And this is why it's worthwhile to understand the context in which the art is made to inform your reading, but also how you know that it changes because the cultural context can change. Some things don't change that much. Some things, the Dutch angle is very useful because it's very effective because of your vision blur, your vision blurring, and blurring makes
but like, so
you get it.
with the Dutch angle example, isn't that a meme with like Nostalgia Critic where he criticizes it? So if you were somebody that were like
Yeah.
really into Nostalgia Critic, and then
Yeah.
every time you saw a Dutch angle,
Yeah.
you then thought of the Nostalgia Critic joke, and then you were taken out of the movie, wouldn't that make it objectively bad?
Yeah, and that's how things change. And I bet you could find some really good examples of like how either culture or movie making in general has transformed what's acceptable just because it became overused or parodied far too much, you know?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, like you look at like early cinema, and early cinema was kind of part one, early cinema.
There we go.
Early
Wait,
cinema,
let me get my textbook open. Okay, go ahead.
it was drawing from theater, right? So a lot of stuff would
Yes.
just be like you would put a camera down, and then you would play out the scene in front of it like you were just recording a play,
Right.
but you were now on set or whatever. And it kind of developed its own visual language from there.
Yeah.
Um,
You-
but I think an interesting exercise would be if you took a camera to somebody who had lived in a bubble almost, like they were not exposed, like they were from a different culture and they were not exposed to movies, films, television, whatever.
yeah.
And then you had them make a movie, and then
Yeah.
you were then to judge that movie. Would you think that movie was bad
Well,
based off the fact that it was not conforming to the standards and like the database
yeah.
of like a
Of
film
West,
perspective?
yeah. The 2,000 years of storytelling and everything that we have in our culture. No,
Yeah.
my first thing is you'd have to give them a copy of fucking Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere or something, and good luck with that. But
I
can't
mean,
do
you
that, just
probably
give 'em
wouldn't
the
enjoy
recording.
watching the movie, right?
I don't
That's
know.
the main thing because our sensibilities have changed over the time, and obviously, and then you have to ask yourself, can you can you see this movie as someone who has never seen a movie before? And the answer is no, obviously not.
No, yeah.
So
So
I
the
would
only
sit on the other
metric you
side of
can
that
judge
fence.
is your own enjoyment.
I would sit on the other
Okay.
side of that fence. I think if whatever tribe that has no technology and you hand them a movie, GoPro and DaVinci Resolve and you come back later, I think there would be something in that movie. I think that like narrative storytelling is such an emergent property of human intelligence that it would be understandable. The symbols, whether it would be a story about love or something, or an action scene or a movie, whatever you would find, you would be identifiable as a narrative and as uh, something that we understand because we share so much with those human beings, even if we share no cultural context.
I don't know about that, but I also cannot explain why I don't agree with that without
Right.
doing a really racist accent. So
Oh
God.
no.
Well, I feel like the most
I
likely
can't.
thing would this be like them kind of vlogging almost,
Yeah,
like not
yeah.
necessarily like looking at the camera and be like, "Hey
Yeah.
guys," but like just recording like their daily activities
Yeah, this is
to
Jimbo.
then
He's going
like be able to
fishing. Jimbo,
see.
what are you catching? Yeah,
It
Well,
can manifest in really funny ways though. Like they're like, especially because in the context of anime, we are talking about what is essentially cross-cultural exchange. And there's a really, really funny take in a Bennett the Sage video
oh no.
where I forget what video it is, but he makes the bold claim that English is the best language for comedy.
Yeah.
It is the most like I'm like, holy fucking shit. How does that make it through? What the fuck are you talking about?
did he have objective metrics to back up his
Yeah,
claim?
that seems like a very hard to verify claim.
Gizmo, as a German, says,
actually,
Well, he
give
gives
me
the
the
classic
numbers.
example of a horse walks into a bar
Mhm.
and the bartender says, why the long face? And he's like, well, this joke wouldn't make sense if the word order was different. And I'm like, yeah, it wouldn't. Why the fuck does that matter?
I mean,
Like-
but it's actually interesting because I've listened to like comedic writers, a podcast by comedic writers that write in German, obviously, and they also argued that English is the better language for writing comedy because of this grammatic structure that you have words, you have the punchline word at the end of the sentence, whereas in German a lot of times you can't write a correct German sentence with the punchline at the end of the sentence, and that kind of accentuates the joke, you know. So
there's something to be said here about Germans.
Yeah, I
being
was about to
very
say
unfunny.
you're walking right into it,
But like
Gizmo.
with Japanese, I mean, a lot of humor is not necessarily based on word order as much as it is like based on I mean it can also be based on word order, but there's also things like puns. There's so many homonyms in
Yeah,
Japanese
yeah.
because the
Yeah.
language is compromised.
Yeah, we're back at
That
Joshiraku.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That you have all these like really just dumb puns.
I
That
mean,
in ways are just untranslatable. I mean, another example would be like Bakemonogatari is
Yeah,
like
oh god,
famous for
yeah.
that.
Omoe means weight and memory, guys. I don't know if you know this.
I mean, shouldn't if because I imagine comedy is a universal experience in the sense that like if you just had two people in a box and they were removed from all contact, they would try to make each other laugh and entertain each other at some point, right?
Yeah, I think every culture developes their own sense of humor.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying.
But-
There's universals, right? Did you ever hear the story of Bill Murray when they just left Bill Murray alone in like a rural place that he did not speak the language to anyone, and they came back 2 hours later, and he was like giving having the kids put on a play and making everybody laugh. Didn't speak a
Oh,
word
I
of the
thought
language.
it was like it would be like a Heart of Darkness situation, and he was like just waging war.
Oh, no.
So my point with that was like, you would develop comedy in every language. So
Yeah.
like, wouldn't that just mean that comedy, like English speaking comedy, is best in English because the punchline it comes after the setup, whereas like in a language where it is reversed, like Japanese or I guess German or whatever, like you would then just construct comedy in a different way because
Well,
it would
it's
have
not
different
it's not just a matter
conventions.
of word order. It's also like a matter of just like I mean, one of the as anyone who is a fan of Trey the Explainer would know, one of the oldest jokes of all time is he's right behind me, isn't he? You know, you're talking shit about someone, talking that shit, and then it's like they're behind me, aren't they? They heard all of that, and like I didn't want them to hear any of that.
Well, we don't have the information or the knowledge necessary to say which language is the best for making jokes, but I think that does bring up the idea of universality, and that's the one that I will die on that hill. I think there is something meaningful to the human condition, and that can be shared in art. And if you are attempting to say something about the human condition, then your art is necessarily better than something that is more specific.
I disagree.
I know. A lot of people do. That's okay.
Again, because for me, it's like, yeah, my interests are like, I mean, again, I mean, stuff like that can be cool, but I also like stuff that is very, very granular and specific.
Yeah.
Again, and like stuff that's like dated, you know.
Well,
Who
yeah.
doesn't? Who doesn't love Jennifer's body? Come on.
If you have
That's a pretty hot bod.
if you have the context and you've done the research to appreciate whatever
Yeah.
reference is being pulled out.
or you just come from that background yourself.
Right. Yeah,
I've talked about
boy,
this.
do I love jokes that you might be a redneck. If,
yeah. I made
I-
a you might be a Zoomer joke today to my little sister. She thought that was funny as fuck.
Oh, no. I've talked about this where it's like reviewing and like this idea of objectivity, I guess, or like critiquing basically stems from like if we were to break it down, at some point somewhere, somebody was trying to get across what they liked about something
Yeah.
or what they didn't
Intention.
like about something,
Yeah.
and conveyed their experience in such a way that resonated with people where they were like, I want to convey my experience in that same way. And then it had evolved its own life from there to where now you have people halfway across the world watching a cartoon from an entirely different culture and assigning it an arbitrary numeric value to represent their complicated, wide variety of emotion and experience and perspective on a 10-point scale.
And it's a beautiful thing.
And maybe
But here's the thing. Here's why you engage with art, Mumi. Because doing that tells you not only something about the art, but it tells you something about yourself and causes you to self-reflect. And then by sharing it and hearing other experiences from other people, you think, am I weird, or other people think about this in this way? What's different with me? And or is everybody, is the problem the children? And like, um, and that's meaningful. That's purpose. That's amazing. That's the highest praise that I can give to art as an endeavor, is that it allows us to do that.
yeah. I mean, definitely if you have the conversation, but then the numeric value you're citing is not the that should just be at
It could be. It
maybe
could
the
be. Come on,
best.
it's a representation of what you thought. And yeah, there you can get in some pretty shitty anime arguments that I'm sure you've all been in on the internet that are just like on Reddit, like, yeah, Yuri Kuma sucks, and yeah, Yuri Kuma's awesome. Shout out to Bob, that guy, man. Yeah.
Like a 6 out of 10 at best,
Yeah,
fucking mid.
exactly.
Yeah.
But and then you're not saying anything. Then you're not looking introspectively. But if you say, I thought Ginkgo's character, I think that was her name in that show, is like was not
Yeah.
fully. I didn't understand her motivations, and why did you understand her motivations? Why did you accept it? Then you're participating in an exchange, and then you're forming culture. You're growing as a human being. You're challenging yourself.
Yeah, but is that objective?
Hmm.
I have an unrelated question. If I make rice and I put like a can of tuna fish in it, is that sushi?
Shit.
Did you put it on top of the rice?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't
I
prepared
mean,
for this level of depth of discussion, you guys.
Is a Pop-Tart a sandwich?
I mean, as long as if you put something on rice, it is then sushi. Like when I went to Japan, we went to a sushi bar. They put like a hamburger patty with like some kind of cream cheese on top,
They do
and
that.
then you're supposed to spread the cheese and then flip the patty over and make hamburg sushi.
It's too much work.
I mean, you didn't have to do that. I don't guess you can just eat it as it is. But
Just eat it as
I mean,
is.
that's how it was intended. But I guess it goes back to does it matter how it was intended?
It's true.
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
think I don't
You
think
know
we
what we've done? We've gone this entire conversation without making any bullshit food analogies, which are the worst things ever.
It's objectivity is a lot like you know, making food in the kitchen with fuck.
he's
I can't
into
Objectivity is a
remember his
lot
the
name.
like
Gordon
pussy
SNL.
milk,
Ramsay.
man.
Gordon Ramsay.
Okay. Well, I think we've wrapped it all the way back around. I do think that there's more to explore here in the does art require intent and how to pick that up.
We could do another 2 hours.
But that,
easily.
yeah, I mean, that's what people have been arguing about. This is go read Kant, go read who are all the thinkers that have argued over this type of stuff through.
Yeah, we didn't even
throughout
get
all
into like half the stuff I wanted to talk. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
points
we
yeah,
I
haven't
was
just-
making.
you guys got more? Oh, let's go. Come on, Light's young.
I mean, I don't even know. Like, what is objectivity even? Like, how are we defining this? Like, are we just defining it
There's
by
a great book about that. It's called Objectivity.
like, are we taking objectivity as like something that exists irregardless of like a observer?
Well, some would say even our physical world is not, the cutting edge of waves and quantum mechanics and everything is
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is a Lacanian thing about like, what's reality? Go watch my beautiful fighting girl video on my channel, like,
Yeah.
that's a
It's
fool's
very
errand right there, trying to drill down into
Yeah,
your quarks and your, physical reality as a basis for what reality is a non-starter. Let's not go there. And,
I
and
mean,
I mean,
turns out the
statement
real
without
is yeah.
statement without personal bias is objective, right? That's kind of
is that what we're going with? Oh, I
that's not
think
possible though.
that's very quickly. Then we just throw that out of like that type of objectivity is not going to do anything because all art must be consumed by humans.
Yeah, well, it's like, can you escape your bias as a person? I mean, obviously, we have, because like we have to talk about the fact that like objectivity does evolve out of scientific endeavors, and of course, when conducting like scientific experiments, it's not just a matter of like I saw a thing, I have anecdotal evidence, yada yada yada. Like
Hold on. The scientific method,
I
the
mean,
big thing is it's repeatable. So if you
right.
show the same film to a bunch of people, you show Grave of the Fireflies, and then somebody cries again and again and again, isn't that objective?
That's that
Depends on
becomes
the
the question
audience.
because that's why we have all of these like that's why we have like the large like hadron collider. It's all these weird like tools and things in order to like deduce stuff that is fundamentally removed from ourselves. That's why we use cameras as mechanical eyes instead of just our own eyes because the
Oh,
camera as an object is
the camera has
technically.
the camera has a focal length. It has a white balance. It has the camera can be manipulated. Have you ever taken a dick pic? Right, you just put it on 0.6 and then you
That's
put it near the edge of the screen and it looks a lot bigger. You get what
and
I'm saying?
that becomes the complicate like that's like the whole like idea of like there's a when we talk about objectivity, it's an interesting question in the context of movies because we can also ask, is the movie itself objective? Is that an objective representation of what is happening on like in the story of the movie? And you get things
Yeah,
like, unreliable narrators, things like that.
yeah,
But that then begs an interesting question is that documentaries documentaries, which do technically like are like supposed to be representations of our objective reality. They are nonfiction in a sense, but at the same time, because of that, we can trust them the least. We can watch Titanic and just yeah, Jack probably drowns. Spoilers, Titanic. Jack drowns at the end of the movie. Okay,
Oh my
that can
god.
be that can be understood, but because we have no reason to be necessarily skeptical of the perspective of the camera. We have every reason to be skeptical of the perspective of the camera in a documentary, though, because the person there is then going to have some sort of agenda that they are then going to try to get across beyond just neutrally representing those events.
yeah.
I mean, all this is
okay.
working under the assumption that we are under the sort of spell or illusion of the film itself, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
the
if you're,
Mhm.
fiction
I thought about this
magic
because it's
circle.
like if you were
Yes.
if you were to watch a movie as because like there are different levels of objectivity, right? If you're trying to go as objectively as possible, and you're watching a film and you're like take Akira for example,
Hmm.
you are then watching it, seeing every layer of celluloid that has been painted and then put
Hmm.
into sequence to then try to imitate movement.
Yeah, the pictures aren't
Like,
actually moving, guys. I don't know the
yeah, there's no
spoilers.
So
then there is no like you're not any like
well,
Yeah, yeah.
see, and
I
that
mean,
gets
the
into
thing
my
is,
point, which is
I
that the only way to talk about a piece of media objectively is to talk about it as a piece of media, to talk about the object of that. So in the case of a movie, it would be the physical film
All
reel
right, well then
of,
it's not
that.
an art. You're saying don't make it a piece of art. Gizmo, you've been trying to get in here for a while. What do you got?
yes. So the thing is, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that scientifically objective is not something that you can apply to uh, entertainment media because we can't be 100% objective. My question would be: should we strive for objectivity when we rate something or score something?
no.
And I don't think we should.
Oh.
I still don't see a reason why anyone should strive for objectivity in that regard.
It's just not even possible.
I think
Yeah.
that you should be objective to yourself. So
Yes.
What does that mean?
I think that's objectively stupid.
I understand what Kai means.
yeah, you're with me.
It's you know, you should be able to you know,
Isn't that
quote
a
unquote
contradiction?
objectively assess
Objective
your own feelings
yourself?
towards something and have like a
Yeah.
good understanding of how you know thyself.
No,
as
I
some
was
may
gonna say that, man. I was going right there. Shit, we may be from the
See,
same
we're on the same
generation.
wavelength.
Yeah, I knew the entire script of the Matrix back in the day. Objectively, I knew it all the way through. I don't remember it anymore. But yeah, no,
It's all subjective.
and then I think that you will never be able to be objective about anything. You will never be able to, yes, objectively improve your art or anything. Somebody could come along and be like, oh, but the younger art was more passionate or whatever, and then and blow your objective progress in making better form or drawing the human body better out of the water and whatever. Postmodernism, fuck off. But that doesn't change the fact that you must pretend like objectivity exists. This is my I'm on some next level shit. I'm on some next level shit. Carrie, come on, come with me on this one because we're 2 hours into this and we should probably wrap it up. But this is my philosophy on life, right? And if you've played Nier Automata, it's the same thing. It's like, why struggle? Because, you know, like I said earlier, any type of criticism or analysis or any type of saying anything about art, engaging with art, takes effort on your part to watch it and then think about it. Why do that? Because you have to do that. Because if art,
because it's fun.
because it's fun, because it tells you more about yourself, because it makes you a better artist as a critic, which is a form of art. Because the unexamined life is not worth living. Damn, I got that right. Let's fucking go. Because that's who you are manifesting as what you think about situations, about hypotheticals. The reason we are humans is because we are able to imagine this fiction in our heads and hold it and turn it over and mold it and parody it and take it off and use it as an influence for our own art and share it with others and decide whether their feedback is meaningful or not. And it's a messy and gray and abstract existence, but that's what being human is, and it's wonderful. Why would you abandon that under the veil of subjectivity? An absolute subjectivity and saying, oh, anything can be anything. No, challenge yourself. Say something interesting. Drop this fucking mic.
See, I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can right now to just then not turn that into me fucking, because I agree to an extent, and I'm now just trying not to shit on Trixie as a result of that.
Oh,
that's just strays
shout out
for
to
no
Trixie.
reason.
Because people do use this like, well, it's all just subjective, my man, as like
as a scapegoat,
like an out,
get out of jail free. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
No, fuck off. You could do better.
I think there is a middle ground. I don't know if it's necessarily this binary of like either there is like no truth or nothing is everything is subject. Like I feel like there's like a disconnect in the sense of like I don't necessarily think that saying that no true like objectivity in assessing art or something implies that there is like a breakdown in reality, I guess. Like I think you can kind of realize how much of our perspective is just subjective to our purview. For example, we for a long time thought that everything revolved around the earth. And then we thought that everything revolves around the sun. Then we thought that we're all just going outwards from a singular point, and the sun is moving directionally that way, and we're
Mumi, we get it.
around
You watched Orb, we get it.
Yeah. But there's the perspective that it just depends on where your lens is set in that sense. Like
Yeah.
If you were putting the Earth at the your center, then that is correct. Like, there's not a great way to objectively define these things.
Yeah, without
And
defining
just
the own
realizing
lens
that
that you're
there's not
bringing to
like
it.
it. Yeah, I think realizing that, you know, if you look at like animation, for example, the animation of Momentary Lily is objectively better than the animation in Dragon Ball Z. What does that mean? Does that mean it's a better show? How is it better? Like,
Yeah.
if you break down like
And that,
each action shot frame by frame, one is more fluid, one is more dynamic. Does that make it a better action scene?
that's for the
Is it more
Sakuga
coherent?
motherfuckers to understand. And that's but that's the whole discussion is like, you get what I'm saying? That is so interesting, those questions that you're asking. How do the Sakuga people define good or bad, or effective or not, or, you know, skilled or unskilled? Um, and yeah, like those discussions of how do you quantify those things, because they are so quantified, like they're so understandable. You know, everybody knows that, well, I could draw that. You know, I went to a museum of modern art and saw the black paint on a canvas, and you're just like, great, you made a point, I guess. And I is that worse than this you know, these high um what is the painting? I do not know painting words. God damn it! I should not have talked about painting. I do not know painting words. But like, you know, the drawing of the human figure that takes a lot of time to master, versus the black paint and paint splattered against the canvas.
Oh, the Vitruvian Man.
Yeah, sure, anything like that. I was thinking more. I saw in Portugal. I saw oh, who's that really good painter? Oh man, he was so good. Oh, something with an R. Roethlisberger. That was it. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the each element is a discrete thing that you can argue over, and that people that are passionate about that can talk about that. I like talking about writing, but each of them gets more and more and more nuanced and getting into the details of what's good versus what's not good. And you can't go all the way. You can't objectify it in any way, but you can just sort of know when it comes together in a good action scene, or a good cut, or something like that. And you can imitate it, and you can improve, and you can generally talk to other people that say, oh yeah, it is good, it is better, you have gotten better, this is a better boards for this cut. And that's interesting, right?
But is that objective? Because like, if I were to go, I run into this when you talk about like more popular anime.
Yeah.
And if I were to say, like, people talk about like a No Game No Life when that was airing, and I was like, it kind of looks like shit. I kind of think it's fucking bad.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? It looks great. And like, if I take a scene and then break it down for them, and I'm like, this is why it's bad. This is why the choreography of this action or whatever is bad. And then compare that to something that I think is good. Does that make it correct? Or is that just my perspective from where I'm at and what I've seen?
Well, general consensus. This is why you share, and this is why you get feedback from other things. I don't think that absolute objectivity exists in anything, even in the physical sciences. But I do believe that collective objectivity exists. Yeah, you know.
But what is the
follow me?
value in collective
Okay,
objectivity?
sure. I could
So,
see
like,
that. I mean, when an anime has like a 9.0 on Mel, for example, you could say it's generally objectively considered good.
Yeah.
I could see merit in that, because most people will like that show.
Yeah.
And
And
vice versa. When it's a show that has like a 5 on Mel, then you can say that most people probably dislike that show,
Yeah.
and in that sense,
And of course, you got to stipulate
like,
that. You got to
so-
be like, these motherfuckers are on Mal, so they're a subset of anime watchers, and they're like, they're Western
Right,
fans, and
right.
they've got this cultural context. But do you know that story about the beans? If you guess how many beans are in a jar, nobody's going to get close. But if you put everybody's guesses together, the average comes out to be remarkably close to what the actual value is.
right?
The wisdom of the masses,
But
right?
it depends on, because like,
Well, see that, but that gets into like issues of like ideology and like mass delusion, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are concerns. This is not a clear and cut, clear science. This is sociology, baby.
Why are we talking about this with anime? God damn it, no.
so if we're talking, okay, so if we're going with your example of like craftsmanship and objectivity, most people are not animators. So then why should their opinion on animation then outweigh? Because like the majority of people who aren't animators are then going to be the ones that are judging animation.
Yeah.
Why should their opinion on animation outweigh the people who's are animators? Right.
Art,
Question of populism.
yeah, I would say it's a question of art is made to be received. It's made to be consumed. And yeah, like
That's yeah, and I mean that's fair. I mean that's looking at it from like the kind of totality sense.
yeah,
But if you're talking about animation, not necessarily as like a product being consumed, but as like a craft or
yeah,
a work. So like as I guess more universal example, like if you're looking at two tables and then someone who makes tables comes over and is like, oh, the craftsmanship on this one's so much better than this other one. But you're kind of looking at it, you're like, well, I like the other one because it's black and it matched my decor, even though it's
Yeah.
a cheap plywood piece of shit that's
Yeah.
gonna break in like 2 years.
yeah.
Like why should your opinion does hold more weight over the other person because it is your house, you're paying your money, you're gonna buy that fucking desk and because it matches your walls or whatever the fuck. But as far as like a quote unquote objective, like defining like what is good, why does your opinion hold more weight than theirs?
Wait. Is are tables art?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. There's art in
Wait,
everything.
Yeah. There's
Ironically, I would say
you were I was
you know-
just saying you're conflating with the functionality of a piece with the artistic intent of a piece.
I would say that's the same for anime. Like if you're talking about it as a consumable product, you're conflating the functionality of it being a product
Well,
to make money.
Yeah,
With
capitalism,
it as a
right?
piece of crap. Yeah.
Well,
like,
no,
as
no,
a
there's a
craft.
better example. There's a better
Yeah.
example here. Hentai. Because what is
Yeah.
the function of hentai is
Right.
ultimately it's a masturbatorial aid. So it's a
Right.
question of like how well does it fulfill that function? Then is also one I would argue is kind of hand in hand. If you have two hands available still.
I knew you were gonna make that joke. I knew you couldn't walk past that one without addressing that. You couldn't leave that one there.
Nope.
No, I get
That's
you.
an
And
interesting question. Would you rate hentai on the same scale as normal anime? with the same?
I feel
like,
weird. I feel weird comparing TV series
it's-
to films, like anime movies.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
that's
I
that's
So
a
like
good
I
example.
don't know. It's
yeah, but I also like the hentai example because there's an obvious function there past entertainment or like, well, look at the pretty lights, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It's like, does it make me coom? How is it as goon material as the kids
yeah, but
say nowadays?
then as a result, I'm not consuming hentai in the same way I would be consuming Metalist or non-Biori or something.
Right.
Right. Well, then there's also the point that how well a hentai works as a masturbatorial aid, how well it works as porn is comically subjective because it's just yourself.
Oh yeah, it's the most, right? Like that's like the thing where you show me the furry porn and I'm like, nah, man, nah.
And I'm like,
And-
maybe.
There's a funny comic that I remember that stuck with me since like I don't know. I remember how old it's at least been 15 years since I've seen this comic. It's like this alien came to like Earth or whatever. It's like live with this dude, and they go to the bar, and they're like talking about like picking up chicks or something. And the alien's like, "Why don't you ask her out? She seems like a suitable mate." And he's like, "Nah, I don't." She's wearing something that's a bit revealing. I don't know if that necessarily means that she's ready to settle down and blah blah blah. And like gives all these like bullshit answers, right? That's all thought out or whatever. And then finally he comes across a girl He's like, oh, I'm going to really ask her out. And he's like, the alien's just like, wait, why? She kind of fits a lot of the criteria you were saying you disqualify these other women for. And he's like, yeah, but I looked through a peephole when I was like 14 years old being babysit, and she looks like my babysitter when she was on the toilet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I was
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, there's a very apt example here as an anime when it comes to sex and reviewing sex.
What's that?
I have to, Ishizoku reviewers.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
literally the whole.
interspecies reviewers. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. I
Because
love that opening.
I mean,
song.
that's literally a show about people. I mean, not even necessarily reviewing porn, but
Oh
just
yeah, critics.
sex
Yeah,
and prostitution.
Yeah,
meta
and they go-
commentary,
and they
a lot of
give
that.
everything a score.
yeah, yeah. Shit, shit. Oh shit.
Yeah, fucking
How do they score on that show? Do they score objectively?
Yeah, yeah.
Do they claim
No,
objective
no,
scores?
no, I think they don't because they bring in other people. Like they're like, well, for me in this situation, it was not it because of this and this and this.
Yeah.
And they
Well, yeah,
take
that's-
pride in having different viewpoints, you know?
Yeah, that is the appeal of interspecies reviewers, is that it is a fantasy
Is
world
that
in which it
discourse,
is
yeah.
exploring
Yeah.
this like kind of niche aspect of fantasy that's not really ever really broached on outside of like, oh, I'm gonna fuck this hot elf chick because that's what all the audience wants to do.
Crim with the female hyena person. Oh my god.
Yeah,
That was so good.
it's about like kind of deconstructing and contrasting these different experiences of like these fantasy races where it's like the elves might like
Older.
mature humor women because to them that's still like really young, and it just exploring these different things of what they would be attracted to. Like the elves, when they're talking about that, they're like, oh well, older elves smell really old, and older women, older human women don't have that old smell.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
Well,
Like from your perspective, is what?
yeah, but that comes across as comedy, right? And then this kind of maybe steelmans my argument by saying that these are different fantasy races that we all see, and that level of variation is not available uh in our human existence, so we kind of more broadly feel the same about more general things.
So you're coming at it from like the human experience
Yeah,
of like,
We're
I
gonna
am.
get
achieve
some really funny
objectivity.
racist comments on this now, aren't
Oh,
we?
no.
Yeah.
Can we achieve objectivity through the general shared human experience?
Yeah, but you're right about sexuality being the one thing that flies so far in the face of that. Of just like, man, there are people who are into so much shit that like, I don't know. Maybe it also confirms what I was saying about like generally though people or straight men like boobs and butts and that type of thing. Of like maybe you can draw some broad claims from these types of some objective from the truth of the masses, you know?
I mean, it changes culturally too.
That's true.
Asses were
It's
not
true.
as big of a thing 30, 40 years ago as they are
You're
now.
totally true. You're totally right.
Um,
Yeah, but at the same time, I saw some sculptures from whatever ancient Mesopotamia, and it's like, damn.
Oh, hold on.
fertility
There's a
goddess.
really cool sculpture. 1 second.
While he pulls that up,
Yeah.
I guess I don't really necessarily see the value in a shared sort of perspective, like from an objective, like good or bad sense, right? There's
Hmm.
obviously a lot of value in almost like the archetypes
Hmm.
in the sense of like the shared experience and how it kind of repeats in literature.
Well, there's so
Uh,
much to experiencing a piece of art beyond just was it good or bad. That
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times those personal experiences are more valuable to people in general. Just hearing the
this
anecdotes.
is the statue, by the way.
Oh, and the
Well, yeah,
painter,
like
my painter earlier was Rembrandt. I saw 2 Rembrandt paintings.
oh,
He
right,
was
Rembrandt.
fucking
Yeah.
fire. He was so good. Holy shit. I don't know shit about painting, but that guy knew how to fucking paint. Oh my god.
When we were in England. I went to the National Gallery in London, and they have some like Leonardo sketches in there, and that, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it
Oh,
doesn't
life-changing.
that isn't that making my argument for me that you can look at some, Da Vinci or some Rembrandt and just been like, oh my god, there's a quality here, and there's some, even if we can't put the qualia on it to describe why it is good. I don't know what art is, but I know what I like, and a lot of other
I d-
people seem to like them too. So
You say that,
Well,
but
have I
then
ever
like
told
Sai is
you?
like, fuck the Mona Lisa.
Yes, I was about to go into my plans to destroy the Mona Lisa.
oh god, it's
Like,
like a
See,
gold
like
mine level
I
or
people,
hate.
something.
Well, it's because well, this is my autism then, because I'm going to keep coming back to this. Is that when I go to like the National Gallery in DC and I'm looking at the paintings,
Yeah,
paintings are cool and stuff, but what often draws my eye, it's not necessarily the paintings themselves, but the frames that they're in are these wonderful works of art as well that are just kind of overlooked. And
yeah,
I would say that the frame the painting is in is just as important as the painting itself. And obviously, when in the context of a museum, in the context of a gallery, there is so much thought put into the way that these paintings are displayed,
absolutely.
what rooms they're in,
Yep,
what other paintings are in the room with
it's
them,
its own form of
then
art.
culminate,
Yes.
yes, into this more general experience as well. So again, I just really I like talking about the container a work of art is in as much as the art itself.
Well, then,
But you could again the
so
content.
everything's a work of art, right? Like everything becomes a meta
Yes,
work of art, right? Like how do
The
you,
best.
yes.
comment down below on how well you think this work of art is right here that we're creating, and then we'll
Well,
comment on
that's
your
a
comment as a work of art. You get what I'm saying?
You want a hot
that's
take?
what McLuhan says. Is like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's not just the medium is the message, but the content of a medium is always another medium. Yada yada
yeah,
yada
yeah, yeah.
yada
It's
yada.
turtles all the way down.
Yeah, exactly. Um, which I get. My thing is I just think that's like so often underappreciated
Oh, it
about art
really
as
is.
well.
It's yeah, I know somebody that's big into museum curation, and it's like it's so dang, man. It's like
Oh yeah.
the whole thing. Gizmo, what else did you have for us before we close this one out?
Because it is getting late in Germany.
Yeah, I was about to
Yeah,
say.
I think we pretty much covered what I wanted to talk about. I mean, we still haven't really mentioned Kant. We haven't talked about death of the author, but I think that's maybe stuff for another
We
time.
did, we did, we did. Death of the author is you can't, the grand narrative is dead. You can't just like assume that the author had one reading, and if he did, it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. You can have your own reading if it's a better reading, or if you it's a worse reading. Who cares? You can have it.
Odds
I
are-
mean,
I think
oh,
it matters. I think it matters. I think it matters for that
I
difference.
think it
I
matters
didn't
too,
want to
Mumi,
open
but
this.
yeah.
Oh, no.
But
Well,
what
like,
was the other
so
one?
like,
Kant. Oh, very quickly, Kant was in the middle. He was very Mumi on this one, right? He's very midway between
Yeah.
absolute subjectivity and then knowing that objectivity is a fallacy. And yeah, he was wise. Did you read it in German, Gizmo?
Oh, I read some Kant years ago, but it's very old German, very
Yeah, it's dry.
very difficult to read, very not very enjoyable to read, to be honest.
Yeah, understandable. What'd you have, Mumi?
oh, uh,
Yeah, closing
say yes.
arguments.
Yeah, closing arguments. Yeah,
Everything is art. Uh,
it's true.
Ironically, even when forget the famous case where they just put the toilet out.
Oh, yeah.
The urinal. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
urinal.
Oh yeah,
That too is art.
Armat or
And I don't
something.
necessarily mean that. I feel like the postmodern aspect of it almost diminishes the craftsmanship of it.
Right.
It's like the urinal in itself is a marvel of engineering when you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
is
but
an
it's just
art-
kind of being sarcastically displayed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like, oh,
right,
look at this,
right.
look at piece of shit. I could throw this out and it's art, right? And it's like very cynical and almost, and it's like it's quote unquote intent,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But at the same
Mhm.
time, it's like, yeah, there is something to be appreciated in
Yeah,
that.
that's a great
it
example of
goes
Death of the
to-
Author of when the artist, was meant to make this statement about being in an exhibit, but in the end, you're making the argument that urinals are art,
Yeah,
just in their
everything that
form,
is
right?
yeah, everything that is created is by somebody is art.
If you choose to view it that way, I think there's an interpretation on the other side of that argument that like you can use a urinal and not appreciate it as art, and then it does not become art.
Um
But I think
I think there is an
go
art to
back to
urinals.
the
Yes.
we can go back to the death of the author some other time, because I do think there's some some points to be made there that differ from yours, Kai.
Yeah. I oversimplify, and knowing full well that I'm
Oh.
bastardizing it.
As far as death of the author goes, I will not eat a single morsel of food until Ayn Rand is dead and buried.
She is dead.
Oh, thank God, I'm fucking hungry.
It lasted a whole 2.5
That's
hours.
that was a shitty joke. That's the kind of quality that you can find over on the Weebcrew. You got a
We're
plug?
terrible. No.
You got a plug? You guys got a plug?
I don't know. Yeah, check out the podcast. We try to get episodes up every Friday-ish, I guess. This current one that we need to get out is delayed, but yeah, like every Friday, basically, new episode discussing something. Sometimes it's anime related. Usually it is. Sometimes we get off track, but we try to keep it mostly about anime. Unlike another anime podcast that doesn't talk that much about anime and is much larger than us.
Sometimes we talk about specific anime.
This is
Sometimes
true.
we talk about
Yeah.
anime subjects. Like
I
this.
thought you were segueing
Objectivity.
into the Anime Plummet podcast.
For a second there, I was also, but that's much larger than
Yeah.
ours. I was like, okay, no, you
It's
can't be
like,
talking
no,
about us.
Yeah.
I'm throwing shade at a podcast with prominent YouTubers.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I
are we
know
taking
who you're talking
pot
about.
shots? Are we
We would
Wait for-
never do that. We listen, all right. On the Weebcrew, we're never sneak dissing, all right. We're never subtweeting.
I gotta unsubscribe from the Patreon then if that's the case. I can't support that.
We would never talk about awful appetite like that. We are
Yeah,
awful
I don't
appetite.
watch any tube, man. You guys are too plugged in for
Why
me.
not? Why not?
Because I have other stuff going on in my life, man. I respect myself too much to talking about wasting your time away with anime and anime podcasts. What do you got going on, Gizmo? Plug yourself.
Yeah, we are the Anime Planet podcast. We release bi-weekly, talking about seasonals mostly, and trashy stuff in general, like waifu tier lists. We just did an episode about that. Harem tier lists we did. Yeah, stuff like that.
So
is this related to the Anime Summit podcast?
Yeah, we're basically a spin-off podcast of the Anime Summit. We started like as a community podcast. We also have like guests from the Discord, for example. We talk about Manga Club sometimes. That's on the Discord as well.
Yeah, we just finished reading. Join the Discord if you want to interact with me and Gizmo. Or join the Justice Discord if you want to interact with Mumi and Sai. We just finished reading Nana in our manga club. It's great.
Oh yeah, and we're reading Prison School.
Oh yeah.
Long term right now.
Yeah.
Very trashy and very interesting.
Wait, Prison School still going as a manga?
No, it's finished.
Oh, it did finish. I was saying,
Yeah.
I didn't quite like the anime, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
It's kind of it was an it's trashy fan service or whatever. Then I was like, I think this is a better like thriller than Death Note.
yeah. It kind of is. It's kind of
been comparing it a lot to Prison Break, the old live action TV show, like from 15 years ago or something. It has a really surprisingly intense moments sometimes.
It does, yeah.
Well,
let's forget that we have like a manga club in our server, don't we?
Do we? Is that still going? I can't read.
The Unranked Manga Club, they're currently reading Decadence and
oh my god, that's
Chicago
unranked?
Guitar.
Wasn't Decadence anime exclusive? Like an original?
No, this is not to be confused with 2021.
Oh, so wait, this is unrelated to the
Decadence.
okay.
No, this is Decadence from 1999.
This is horribly confusing.
Wow.
Action comedy. Aito and Reiko are excellent detectives in handling criminals, but also given their superior a lot more trouble. Give their superiors a lot more troubles than they like to do things their way. So it's a buddy cop duo apparently.
Wow.
I wouldn't know. I'm not taking part of that. So.
If you like those deep cuts, head on over to the Discords where you can find us. Also, where you can find me, godisallolly.com, youtube.com/clearandsweet. You're already here if you're watching this, going up on my channel. I have guested on both of these guys' channels and podcasts. You can go hear me on literally the first guest on the Weebcrew.
This is
Back in the
literally
day.
true, yeah.
Literally true.
Objectively true.
Episode 2.
I'm
go
sure
check it out.
someday.
Yeah.
I'm sure someday we'll have you back on to talk about the rebuilds.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
for all this-
anytime. I love it.
like,
check out
it's
my
years
video
ago.
on Mari Makanami, yeah. On my channel. And then I just did a Tenchi Muyo review for look back with Mike over on the Anime Plummet. So check that out too. Yeah. I hope all you listeners, if you got here 2.5 hours into this podcast, I hope we said something meaningful to you. I hope you continue to use anime as a way to challenge yourself and enjoy the hobby of criticizing art and thinking about things deeply. I wish you the best of luck in making the world a more interesting place. And I'll see you next time.
Why so poignant?
Thanks, I have a talent for it.
I noticed.